All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Cameron Desai. I serve as the mayor representing the city of Pinole, and thank you for joining us. I now call the special city council meeting of May 13th, 2025 to order. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you are willing and able to, please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are now on item 2 of the agenda, our land acknowledgement, which I will read aloud. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Ohlone people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Ohlone elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Ohlone land, the land that Pinole sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Ohlone community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. And now we are on item 3 of the agenda, roll call and city clerk's report. City Clerk Bell, good evening.
Good evening. Mayor Sasai.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Tave.
Here.
Councilmember Martinez-Rubin.
Here.
Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Toms.
Here.
City Manager Young.
Here.
City Attorney Kasher.
Here.
Deputy Clerk Stone. Mayor and Council, the agenda was posted on Monday, May 12th at 10:30 a.m. with all legally required notices. No written comments were received in advance of the meeting. Supplemental material to the packet was published after the agenda, distributed to council and staff, and is available at the back of the council chambers for public review. Does the council have any conflicts to report on this evening's agenda items? Seeing none, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving down to item number 4, we have public comment, citizens to be heard. Madam City Clerk, do we have any comments this evening?
Yes, thank you. Rafael Menez and Irma Ruport in person.
Thank you. Quick reminder, folks, that we have 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes per speaker.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Rafael Menez. I'm a resident of Pinole, and I'm pretty sure I won't be using 3 minutes for this one. First off, I'd like to report to my pleasure the continued decline of COVID-19 rates nationally as well as locally. We're currently, as of May 3rd, so basically last week's reporting data at 1.8 per 100,000, which is better than we've been since May of 24, pretty much. So we're making progress. I would still, as long as we're above, I'd say 1.5 per 100,000, encourage people caring for who themselves are in sensitive populations, such as immunocompromised, elderly, et cetera, to continue to wear masks in crowded indoor spaces and continue to get booster shots and take the ordinary and appropriate precautions. The second topic I'd like to discuss is the challenge our republic is facing at the present time. It is my opinion, based on the actions of the current administration to openly defy all levels of the judiciary, from the district court, circuit court, and Supreme Court levels, with regards to our most basic and fundamental constitutional rights, including the Fifth Amendment right and our First Amendment rights, which apply to all persons on American soil, not just citizens, that further action is needed. Therefore, I would like to invite all persons who would wish to join me to a protest I intend to hold in downtown Pinole on March 24th at 12 p.m. I intend to remain on the sidewalks and for it to be a civil and nonviolent protest. But I think it is time and past time that we collectively showed our dedication to our democracy and to our First Amendment rights by expressing those rights through protest. If you would like more information, please contact indivisible.northeastbay@gmail.com. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask for a clarification?
Sure.
The speaker, you said March 24th.
Sorry,
You meant
May
May.
24th. Yes,
Thank
I
you.
got the Marches mixed up.
Thank you.
May 24th. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and public. And I'm here to announce as a Community Services Commissioner, Saturday, May 17th, 9 to 11 at the Pinole Youth Center, we're having our Community Service Day. We have more projects and volunteers. Please come and join us. Youth also get community credit service for that day. I got some information today regarding, we have at least 5 people that are registered, and there's a Boy Scout group coming. We have 10 to 15 projects. We will be signing up about 8:30, and lunch will be about 11 o'clock. Mayor, we also will be cleaning up the library, the creek. We'll be painting the picnic tables at the park, hopefully, Fernandez Park, and hopefully we can hit the dog park. Tiny Tots, power washing a building, baseball field, creek, weed cutting, and some graffiti. Mayor and council, I can't tell you how important it is for all of us to get out there in the community and start cleaning up. It doesn't look good, but we do have a good community and a good group. I would ask you to put it in your Facebook, invite everybody and anybody who could make it for 2 hours. I know there's a lot of things going on, but at least give back to your city, at least 2 hours to our community, and use that as maybe all getting together and cleaning up this place. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. City Clerk, any other comments we have?
Yes, we do have one online, Debbie Long.
Good evening.
Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, am I unmuted now? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
go ahead.
Okay, all right. Good evening, council. I had a question on the 24-25 budget. Evidently, mid-year, the council's discretionary spending and travel was increased to $12,000 for, I guess they needed to take a trip for government, a national government or councils. And it's my understanding that trip might have been to Yosemite. So that increased it for $8,000 per council member at that time. And I apologize, I don't remember which page this was referenced on. Could we have a complete accounting of how that $8,000 was spent? Down to exactly almost the penny, because $8,000, I can take my entire family to Hawaii for that. So that was my question before we got into the new budget. I'd like to know, 1, how that money was spent, and 2, do we ever get any reports back as to how it was a benefit to our community specifically? I know often the council will go back to Washington and meet with Garamendi, yet Garamendi is a 30-minute drive down the road. So I myself, and I'm sure others, would be curious to know how this is a benefit and how those costs are actually distributed between hotels, flights, food, entertainment, whatever that may be. So that's something I'd like to see in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also just want to remind folks for future reference that the first citizens to be heard is for items not on the agenda. So if you want to make the comment again on the new business item 5A, you're welcome to. Thank you. City Clerk, any other comments?
There are no more public comments.
Thank you. With that being said, next item on the agenda is new business, item 5A, the preliminary proposed fiscal year 25-26 operating and capital budget. Director Guillory, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, city staff, and members of the public. For this item, I will be presenting an overview of the preliminary proposed fiscal year 2025-26 operating and capital budget. Next slide. So the recommendation is similar to the recommendation from the last council meeting of May 6th. And we recommend that the City Council review the preliminary proposed budget and provide direction to staff for potential changes to incorporate in the next version of the budget, which will be the revised proposed version, and that will be presented to the City Council on June 3rd. Next slide. So some of this information is a repeat of what was presented at the last city council meeting, so please bear with me on that. Before we get into the budget numbers, wanted to take a moment to reflect on the city council strategic priorities, and these came about as a result of the city council retreat that was held in February. So what we did here is added some additional information on the status of the various priorities and how they will be addressed. And they'll be addressed through a number of channels, including the capital improvement plan. Some of them are already included in the annual budget on an annual ongoing basis. Some of the initiatives are also in process and in the exploration phase. So we wanted to just add more context in terms of the type of project that it falls under, and then also the status of that project. And so the slides, or the next two slides, indicate the status of those strategic priorities. Next slide. And next slide, please. So again, here's just a recap of the budget development process and how we got to this point of developing the preliminary proposed version for the fiscal year 2025-26. And just quickly, we start with the mid-year budget for the fiscal year 2024-25 as our baseline budget. We add in any known changes, any assumed changes, and then also accept requests for adjustments to the baseline budgets from the departments. We have a number of internal meetings, which includes all department heads, the city manager, and the finance department. We review budgets in depth and consider any requests for changes or additions. And from there, we put together the preliminary proposed budget that we are presenting to you tonight. It should also be noted that the budget process is an iterative process, which is why we bring before you a number of different versions. And it should be expected that there'll be variations between each version up until the point of adoption. And that's because there are new developments that occur as we go through this process, such as updated projections on some of our revenue sources, for example. Next slide. So the city's structurally balanced budget policy is what drives the development of the annual budget. It applies to the general fund operating budgets, and it also includes those budgets that the general fund supports. And the goal is to create a proposed general fund operating budget that is structurally balanced. And that is to ensure the sustainability of services and expenditures, and also to develop a fiscally sustainable budget, not only in the upcoming fiscal year, but for years into the future. And that also means that our baseline budget, or our total ongoing or recurring revenues, are sufficient to cover our ongoing expenditures. Next slide. So the components that make up the baseline budget includes recurring revenues, and those are revenue sources that we expect to continue to receive well into the future. They're also known as permanent revenues. So all of our tax revenues, property tax, sales tax, utility users tax, our franchise tax, et cetera. Fines are also another recurring revenue. Interest income for cash that is invested, licenses and permits, and also charges for services. Our recurring expenditures, or permanent expenditures, are salaries, benefits, utilities, maintenance of our city, as well as any mandated agreements that we have, for instance, agreements that we have with Contra Costa County. Next slide. So the items that are not included in the baseline budget are the recurring components, and those are one-time in nature. On the revenue side, that includes, for example, a one-time sale of property, also grant awards that are usually have a specified time limit. For non-recurring expenditures, one-time items would include council-directed initiatives or programs, staff-recommended budget additions for special projects or the administration of a special grant program, and capital improvement projects are also considered non-recurring once they're completed. Next slide. So focusing on the general fund and the baseline budget, these are just a few highlights on the budget. The baseline budget revenues and expenditures are consistent with the prior year. And it is what we call a status quo budget, meaning that there are no major changes to service levels or staffing levels. The budget does include a projection for the new sales tax revenue, Measure I, which was passed in November of 2024, and that's expected to generate approximately $2.6 million, so the same amount as the Measure S funds. At this point, the city's baseline budget in the general fund indicates a positive balance as the ongoing revenues exceed ongoing expenditures. However, other operating funds do have budget shortfalls at this point, and those funds do rely on the general fund for subsidies as they are not able to fully recover 100% of their costs to provide the various services. And those include the Recreation Fund, the Pinole Community Television or PCTV Fund, and the Building and Planning Fund. Also important to note is that the CalPERS contribution this year is increasing by 19% from the prior fiscal year, and that equates to approximately $650,000. That expenditure alone exceeds the growth in the city's largest sources of revenue, the property tax growth, and then also the revenue or the sales tax growth for existing sales tax. So if we compare that to the growth in the Measure S funds and the general fund, that amount alone exceeds those. The budget also does not include a transfer to the general reserve to meet the policy level of 50% of total ongoing general fund expenditures. And then lastly, we are beginning the fiscal year 2025-26 with a deficit which carried forward from the fiscal year 2024-25. For the current fiscal year, we did a one-time transfer from the city's general reserve to balance the budget, and that amount was $844,000. Next slide. So as we go through this process, we have a couple of financial goals that we keep in mind as we develop the budget. And one is that we want to develop a fiscally responsible and sustainable budget, not only for the upcoming fiscal year, but in future years as well. And one of the ways to do that is to maintain a positive net position, whereby the city's total assets exceed its total liabilities. And a way to maintain positive net position is to maintain positive cash. And that's done by implementing a balanced budgets and not including any deficit spending for ongoing expenditures. And then also addressing some of our unfunded liabilities, such as our unfunded liability and our other post-employment benefits or retiree medical reimbursements. Next slide. So this chart here depicts the citywide organization. Pinole is a full-service city, provides the various services that you see listed here, and these are the services that our limited resources goes to fund. Just one correction there, the PCTV unit is actually under the Office of the City Manager, so we'll make that correction in the next version. But these are the services that the budget supports on an annual basis. Next slide. The next is the authorized positions, and it shows the last 5 years. This, for the fiscal year 2025-26, the budget supports approximately 116 full-time equivalent positions. There's no major changes to staffing levels from the prior year. And actually, the total FTE has been held steady over the last 4 years. You do see a decrease between the fiscal years 2022-23 and fiscal year 2023-24, and that is due to the transition of the fire department from the city to the Contra Costa County Fire Protection District. Also, there is a slight increase between the current fiscal year and the upcoming fiscal year, and that is due to the positions that were approved at mid-year. And at that time, those had no fiscal impacts as we repurposed those budget allocations and moved funds away from professional services to fund 3 full-time positions and to bring those in-house. Next slide. So here is an overview of the preliminary proposed general fund budget, just showing the various components. So the budget is made up of 2 parts. It's our baseline budget, that is our ongoing operating budget of $32 million. And the second component is our one-time items. So it includes any one-time operating budget items as well as capital improvement projects that are funded by the general fund. And for those items, we are recommending to use a portion of our unassigned, unreserved fund balance in the amount of $1.4 million. So that is outside of the regular or outside of the baseline budget. This will be use of our fund balance that we've accumulated. Next slide. So here is a summary of the key assumptions for the revenue and the various growth rates. I'll just go through these quickly. For the property tax, we're assuming a 9% increase, and this increase is mostly due to the residual funds we'll receive from the payoff of the former redevelopment debt and the formal dissolution of the successor agency. For property tax, we're assuming a 1% increase, consistent with projections provided by our sales tax consultant, HDL. Utility users tax, 3%, based on trend analysis. For franchise tax, we're assuming no growth, and that's mostly due to the decline that we continue to see in the cable segment due to consumers moving away from traditional cable. For transient occupancy tax, we're assuming 13%, a 13% decrease, and that's based on trend analysis. The business license tax, we're assuming a 2% increase, also based on trends. Intergovernmental, we're assuming 5% increase, and that's also consistent with projections from our property tax consultant, who assists us with property tax and sales tax projections. For permits, we're assuming a 20% increase, and that is based on trend analysis, as well as the significant growth that we continue to see in the encroachment permits. Next slide. For fees, we're assuming a 4% decrease, and mostly due to the decline in code enforcement fees. For charges for services, 5%. This is based on the Tri-Cities agreement that we have with the cities of Hercules and San Pablo. Other revenues, which includes grants and interest income, rental income, we're assuming a 20% decrease, and that's mostly due to the interest income due to market conditions and less idle cash that the city has available to invest. And then lastly, the transfers in, that is from the Section 115 trust, and that it is transferred into the general fund to help offset a portion of the pension costs. Next slide. So here is an overview of the numbers, as we can see, for fiscal year 2025-26. Proposed budget, we're assuming total revenues of $33.5 million, an increase of about 19%. This also includes the new Measure I revenue. And if we go down to the bottom, the second to the last row, we see the transfer in from the general reserve, and that was the one-time transfer in the fiscal year 2024-25. So we're not assuming any transfer from that reserve to balance the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Next slide. So the pie chart here just shows the composition of the general fund dollars and where the money comes from. It primarily is generated by tax revenues. So 82% of the general fund revenue budget is from tax revenues, with property tax and sales tax being the largest categories. Next slide. So looking at the key expenditure assumptions for salaries and wages, we're assuming a 2% increase just based on normal growth. It does not include any increases that could result from labor agreements at this point in time. For PERS benefits, we're assuming an 11% increase. That's mostly based on the city-required contribution to pension, as well as significant growth in the medical benefits. In other benefits, that includes all other benefits, and those are based on trend analysis and rate increases that we receive from providers of those services. The professional services, we're assuming 7%, primarily based on cost escalation in various contracts, mostly those that we have with Contra Costa County for the fire services agreement, as well as animal control and library services. For other operating, this is primarily our utilities, and we're assuming a 17% increase based on trend analysis and electricity rate increases. For materials and supplies, we're assuming no growth, and this is just based on cost estimates provided by the departments and their operating needs for the upcoming year, fiscal year. For interdepartmental charges, we're assuming 8% increase, and this is due to lower reimbursements to the general fund from other funds, as well as an increase in general liability insurance premiums. For capital outlay, we're assuming 29% based on cost estimates provided by the departments when they entered their departmental budgets. Debt service is 3%. This is based on the debt obligation schedule for the 2006 pension obligation bonds. And then for transfers out, we're assuming a decrease based on reduced transfers to the capital improvement funds that have accumulated substantial fund balances for capital projects. So we have moved a number of capital projects that were funded by the general fund over to those other sources, including gas tax, Measure J, and some of the other capital improvement project funds that we have. Significant fund balances available for capital projects. Next slide. So again, here's just a summary of all of the general fund expenditures. We are assuming expenditures of totaling $32.1 million, or a 14% increase. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the general fund currently shows a positive balance of $1.4 million before we factor in the additional subsidies to the other operating funds. Next slide. So here, professional services is the third largest expenditure category. So we wanted to provide some additional information on what kinds of services are included in that category. If we look at the chart there, the professional services budget is $8.9 million. The majority of that is for the Contra Costa County Fire Protection District Fire Services Agreement. That is just under $6 million. And we also have a number of other services that are non-discretionary. We have the animal control or animal services, library services, other county services such as the crime lab and the justice center that we are required to contribute to. Our city attorney contract is also included in this category. It also includes all of our facilities, vehicle and equipment maintenance for the maintenance of our buildings and equipment. Abatement is also included here for weed and brush removal. And then also the maintenance on our network and software systems. So citywide IT systems, our CAD and RMS systems in the police department as well. It also includes travel and training and office expenses. Next slide. So looking at the composition of the general fund expenditures, we see that the largest categories are the salaries and wages at 53% of the total expenditure budget. And then, as I mentioned before, the ComFire contract is about $6 million. And so looking at the rest of the categories, the departments really operate on pretty lean budgets. If we look at the amounts for our materials and supplies, as well as our other operating, they make a very small portion of the total budget. Next slide. And this is just a different view of the general fund expenditures and looking at it by function. And we see that the majority of the budget does go toward keeping our community safe. So it goes toward police department and fire services. But every department in the city receives some portion of the general fund. Next slide. So moving away from the baseline budget and looking at the one-time items, this is just an itemized list of the proposed one-time budget items for the upcoming fiscal year. We've gotten this list down much shorter than it was in prior years. Again, looking at the bottom section, mostly for the capital improvement projects, we've been able to leverage other funds for a number of our capital projects, especially the road projects. So really fully utilizing funds in our gas tax, our Measure J, our road rehabilitation fund, our arterial roads fund, and moving those away from the general fund. So staff is recommending one-time allocations totaling $1.4 million between our one-time operating budget items and capital improvement projects for the general fund. Next slide. So going over to the other operating funds that are supported by the general fund, first we see the recreation fund. And looking at total revenues, we're assuming 5% increase in revenues. Grants, while we continue to explore grants for activities in the recreation department, we don't have any pending at this moment, so we didn't budget for those. And we're not expecting to receive the tobacco grant for the upcoming fiscal year. We were notified that we no longer qualify for that, so that was removed from the budget. Looking at the expenditures, there's really no growth there. It's just the natural growth for salaries and wages and benefits. And we're expecting, again, zero growth, but the revenues are not enough to cover the ongoing expenditures. And so the fund currently has a gap of about 1.1 million. And that will require an additional transfer from the general fund to support the recreation fund and to keep the service levels or to maintain current service levels and continue to provide those services to our community. Next slide. So the next is the building and planning fund. And looking at total revenues, we're assuming a 29% increase. For the grants, we're expecting a number of grants for the upcoming fiscal year, which have already been awarded, so they're included in there. And there's one grant from the California Energy Commission. We also have an MCE community grant, an MTC EV charging grant, and an AARP grant that is anticipated, that is included in that number. So most of the growth that we see there is in the grants category. Going down to expenditures, we are assuming a 23% increase. You may recall at mid-year, we did add an additional position, and that was for an associate planner. So that position is included here, and we also redirected funds from the professional services category to fund that position, to bring it in-house and also to make it full-time. So going from 3 days a week to 5 days a week. And the net cost of that, there's a zero net cost. So professional services are increasing, but that is for one-time items that will be funded by the grants that I listed. So looking at the fund as a whole, there is a shortfall at this point of $831,000, and this is mostly attributable to the planning side. The building side does recover 100% of its costs, but there are a number of initiatives that we cannot recover through fees for the planning side. So this also will require a subsidy from the general fund of $831,000. Next slide. The next is the Pinole Community Television Fund, which also requires a general fund subsidy. For total revenues, we are assuming a 21% increase, and that is mostly in our miscellaneous revenue with potential sponsorships. For the expenditures, there is actually an assumed decrease, and that's in professional services. There were some one-time items for the fiscal year 2024-25 that was completed. So we're expecting those costs to go down, and then also the capital outlay. So there were some small capital projects that were reduced for the fiscal year 2025-26. And so the shortfall at this time is $207,000. Next slide. So looking at this in totality, the general fund total revenues at this point is $33.5 million. Total expenditures is $32.1 million, and there's a positive or a surplus of $1.4 million. If we factor in the additional subsidies from the general fund to the other operating funds of $2.1 million, that leaves a deficit of approximately $689,000 that we will need to close. Next slide. So the last operating fund is the sewer enterprise, and this fund, as an enterprise fund, is fully self-sustaining, meaning that its ongoing revenues covers its ongoing expenditures and more. It also has a substantial fund balance that has accumulated over the years, and that will be used to fund the capital projects. The amount that you see in the capital outlay line of $29.2 million, that is all of the capital improvement projects for the next 5 years front-loaded into the budget, but those will be covered by the fund balance that is available in that fund. Next slide. So during the last city council meeting, staff did present a number of considerations for the city council. So we're returning with more information on those items. And the first is looking at the reserve policy. So we have discussed for some time possibly reducing the reserve level from 50% of total ongoing general fund expenditures down to 25%. And staff recommends that you consider transferring that difference into the Section 115 trust to start setting aside funds for the other post-employment benefits, or also known as the retiree medical. And if we were to do that, starting with a balance in the general reserve of $10.1 million and maintaining 25% of total ongoing expenditures equates to approximately $7.4 million. So the amount available to transfer into the trust would be $2.7 million. This could also relieve the budget because we could reduce the budgeted amount of OPEB expenditures of $1.4 million and pay directly from the trust. Next slide. So the next one is the City Council travel and training allocations. The preliminary proposed budget currently includes an allocation of $4,250 per council member. That is in line with the adopted budget for the fiscal year 2024-25. The City Council allocation was increased to $12,000 per council member, and it was our understanding that that was one time. And so we did, for the preliminary proposed, reverted back to the $4,250, and that can be updated per council's direction. But that is what's included in the budget at this point. Next slide. The next was a request for the new position, the associate engineer in the enterprise fund. And this position is needed primarily to advance a number of the wastewater capital improvement projects that have not been addressed, and that's mostly due to staff capacity. The estimated cost for the salary and benefits of this position is $175, and that cost would also be shared with Hercules. Next slide. So another consideration for you all to consider is the cost of living adjustment across all labor groups, and 1% equals $173,000. Right now, the budget does not include funding for potential negotiated salary increases. This is informational, and labor negotiations are underway. Next slide. So the next one is some information on potential debt financing, primarily for major road projects, looking at scenarios between between $15 and $25 million on the next couple of slides. $20 million will cover approximately 30% of the road issues, but will improve over 50% of Pinole's roads. We're looking at recommending a 5-year road program as opposed to 20 years. And we'll see also that we prepared 4% and 5% interest rate scenarios, just based on current market conditions and interest rates. The annual payment for the debt could potentially be funded from the vehicle impact fees and also gas tax. And this would help to address some of those larger projects. At this point, we're on a pay-as-you-go basis, and that's mostly covering ongoing maintenance in the smaller road projects. Next slide. So sorry, that's a little bit small there, but these tables are also in the staff report. So this is showing a 4% interest rate and scenarios between $15 and $25 million, and then also time periods from 15 years to 20 years. And as we can see over in the second table, the shorter the repayment period, the less the city pays in interest. Next slide. And the next one is a similar summary. This is just at the 5% rate. And of course, this one would be more expensive, but again, the shorter the payment period, the less interest we pay. So those are more informational, just to give you an idea of the debt financing, the sizing, and also the time periods. Next slide. So in conclusion, just to reiterate again, the general fund currently has a positive balance of $1.4 million. The additional subsidies that would be needed to continue to provide the services that were provided by the Recreation Department, as well as the Building and Planning Department and PCTV, indicates a shortfall of $2 million. So we do have a deficit to address of approximately $689,000. And as we go through this process, staff continues to look at ways to close that gap. So not only looking at possibly reducing expenditures, but even looking more so on the revenue side of things. So looking at grants and actively pursuing those grants, working with internal staff, as well as working with Townsend Public Affairs to help identify grants that we could actively pursue. Looking at potential sponsorships and also ways to generate additional revenue in the various areas. Next slide. So the next steps in this process would be to incorporate any changes that, if you have any for us tonight, and to put together the revised proposed version of the budget and present that on June 3rd. And the goal is to have the City Council adopt the final proposed budget on June 17th. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Guillory. We'll start with council questions to staff. Checking online to see if Councilman Murphy is raising his hand or not.
Yes, Mayor. I didn't raise my hand, but I do have questions.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, hey, good evening, Director Guillory. Thank you for your presentation. And you really make budget cycles both fun and very clear at this point. So I really just, again, commend you on all your work that you put into this presentation. Of course, to our city department heads and our city staff for making this possible. I wanted to also really, just as a comment before my questions, also really just thank our staff. You know, there was a time 4 years ago entering the city where we overlooked a lot of opportunities, particularly around grant funding. And I'm guessing that predated my time even on council, where folks kind of maybe overlooked and overlooked opportunities for us to seek innovative funding. And so just wanted again to commend staff on their work, particularly just to make sure that the things in the projects that we as an agency feel are important are being funded. And we're being very creative of that. We've sought both state funding, federal funding, and also private funding for different initiatives. And so that's just really creative. And again, that's a reminder that, we're not just using and being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, but also seeking additional funding opportunities in ways that make, the worthwhileness of the current funds that we have valuable. I did want to ask about, this is the second time you had mentioned the DOJ grant, the anti-tobacco grant. Can you explain where or when we lost our eligibility for that and the processes on that?
Just a moment, Director Dwyer is going to assist us with that.
Oh, hey. Hello, Director Garler. I can't actually see, maybe that's just a Dave, hey, PCTV thing. I'm like, I can't actually see you all, but it's okay. At least I can hear.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and Council. So for the anti-tobacco program through the city, the Community Services Department was not eligible because they were only allowing for those who could do enforcement. So police were more, we weren't even allowed to apply through community services because ours was focused on education. So we were educating students, community, we were doing outreach, but we weren't enforcing. And so what they did this year, we found out at the end of last year, and they told us that because we were not enforcers, we were no longer eligible and could not even apply.
Gotcha. So my understanding is that grant, when we originally applied to it, we did apply through the police department. Did that change over the last couple of years, or?
We actually had multiple applications when we had done it. We had, I can allow for, maybe Director Guillory may have theirs specifically, or Chief Clavoon, but the code enforcement had a piece of it, as Director Whalen is shaking her head. So they had their application. Community Services had an application specifically for enforcement. And then also the police department also had a subset of an application. So everybody's was a bit different, but they all had a program running differently. And so it was our understanding that through Townsend, we were still going to continue, but since Community Services was no longer eligible because we were more so just educational rather than enforcement, we were not able to do that.
Okay, thank you for that answer, and thank you for clarifying that, because that had been mentioned a couple times.
Yes.
So thank you. Can staff speak to the status of the PCTV master plan? I know that we have been talking about that for a couple years and have put it in a funding tab at some point, but I just was wondering, and I know we did a survey, but what's the status of the master plan? And the reason I'm asking is I assume that master plan would identify, again, a sustainability plan in some way to PCTV, given the conversations today. Can y'all give a quick report on that?
Yes, this is Director Fiona Epps here. I can speak to the PCTV master plan. So we had taken the PCTV master plan out of the professional services budget because we decided to pursue it internally. And so this is being developed by myself and the PCTV staff. And we do have a section in there for fiscal sustainability right now, where we are actively exploring the possibility of grants, sponsorships, and miscellaneous revenue that we can use to build up PCTV and be able to be a sustainable division. And you will be able to see, we have it on the agenda schedule for June 3rd, and I'll be doing a presentation to go over the PCTV strategy is what we're calling it. So you'll be able to get more information about all of the details for that at that time.
Thank you, Director Epps. And then when that money was moved, or I'm assuming when you're saying moved, are you saying that that professional services budget, where did that money go when it was moved?
It was just decreased, so we just took it out of the budget. It was originally $25,000 over the past couple of years. Since I've been here, it was a line item on the budget under professional services, and we just took it out because we were doing the work internally.
Okay. And then there's just a process question. So we've updated the budget a number of times. When to Director Guillory or maybe the city manager, we've updated the budget several times throughout the year and throughout several different years. One of the things we've done was, again, take some out of agency jobs and move them kind of to in-house jobs. We've also obviously membership fees increase occasionally for for associations that different departments are a part of. When do you all see those, what I consider recurring fees, even in their increases? When do you decide whether or not they are recurring fees or not?
When you say recurring fees, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so for example, we pay a number of fees to different associations. I think municipal authorities and agencies that the agency of the city of Pinole is a part of. Those, I imagine, are considered recurring fees. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And then we also have made adjustments to the budget to bring out of agency roles. And in our case, I think it was in community development and IT, we moved those into full in-house agency mode. But we've done that through budget adjustments. So when are those budget adjustments seen as consistent and recurring throughout every year, and when are those seen as like one-time changes?
Yes, so for the items that you just mentioned, such as the IT positions, that was ongoing. Although it was a contract, it was ongoing because we didn't have an in-house IT department. And now that we have one, we're recruiting for a permanent position to fulfill that activity, so that contract would no longer be in the budget, and that would be considered an ongoing cost because that is a position.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, or do you have another example you'd like to?
No, that answers my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go back to council here in person for questions to staff. We'll start with Councilor Martinez-Rubin to my right.
Thank you. With the departments that need subsidies from the general fund,
Yes.
not only are the amounts still needed in those particular departments, but generally in the entire general fund for the city, the larger expenses are staff and benefits. So if services would remain, or the question is this: how would services be affected if the general fund did not support those departments? And I think that's a question to the different department heads if they are here. I'd like the public to hear that, as well as council, and why it is that we do use our general fund money as we do to help those departments. It's not the first year that we see that need, and services actually have been augmented, or it seems that they've been enhanced in spite of not entirely having the revenues from outside sources to help in those different departments. So if staff would help us understand how services could be affected in the absence of general fund support. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. It's on, right? Okay. Thank you for your question. So without staff, without a department, let's talk about community services. What we currently do between community events for families, we build parks, we give experiences, our 4th of July, our swim center, we operate with the SEALs. We've now opened up facility rentals for people to be able to have baby showers in their events, and looking at revenue for that, we offer programs for ages as young as 6 months with the SEALs and 3 years for internal programming. We do youth camps when parents have to work during seasonal breaks for schools. During the summer camps, when parents still have to work and guardians, we offer programs during the majority of the workday, so that way families can place their kids in fun experience programs. To your point, we have expanded. We have expanded to our core to allow for us to do as much as we can to serve the families of Pinole, whether that's improving our parks, improving experiences, keeping our families healthy and as happy as they could be, because when I looked for my home, I looked not just at the home, but I looked around the home. I looked at the community, I looked at the schools, and I looked at their parks, because their parks are where they go when teenagers have mental health problems, or when they want to run away, and when they look for help, they look at recreation centers, and they look at our camps. Our camps are one of the first people that find out about experiences where they're struggling at home or in school or with themselves. And we, as recreation leaders, which are our part-time staff, to our custodians, which help clean up after seniors fall, or when we have experiences at our senior center, providing lunch programs for our seniors and food programs, because there are food insecurities for our seniors, and making sure that costs are affordable where they can still afford them on a fixed income. We are working. When I tell you community services works around the clock, that's because when people are done for the day, it's when our programs start. So you will constantly see us showing up, whether that's during work hours or without. So you are absolutely right. Those experiences, those programs, those activities, without the funding to the general fund, we could not improve the pool, because if we don't improve the pool or bring awareness to the deferred maintenance that we have there, we can't continuously put our kids in a pool that can't sustain itself. If we can't do the improvement to the city parks, then those playground equipment will start deteriorating. And those are things that, for health and safety, we really want to take a look at. And so these aren't things to further shine Pinole. They're things that we should really look at to make sure that we keep the quality within community services thriving for our families. I've seen so many people show up to things like Earth Day and even the community service day we're having. They're there because they want to help Pinole and be a part of Pinole, and Coastal Cleanup Day and Dumpster Day. These are things that are free, and we are doing our best to continue those services, but without funding from the general fund to help support that, we can bridge the gap. By raising services, we are coming back with the master fee schedule to increase costs, because costs do need to go up, and with the hoping of developing revenue from our facility rentals and bridging that gap, we will continue to strive to do that, because we need to do that every year and look at that. But without the funding, we do not have that. Any questions?
Thank you. Councilor Martinez-Rubin, any other questions you have of staff? Or?
Mm-hmm. Can
Sure.
we also hear from the other departments as well? Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Lily Whalen, your Community Development Director. So for code enforcement, we have one full-time employee in code enforcement. We do supplement in the fire season with some contract staff at a limited budget amount to help the code enforcement officer issue notices, citations, and conduct abatement on those properties. The goal with code enforcement is to gain voluntary compliance. So our goal is not to issue fines and fees and citations. We're not in the business to collect money. We're in the business in code enforcement to educate the public about the codes and help them fix whatever issue is on their property. So without a subsidy, we wouldn't be able to respond to any complaints from the public regarding code enforcement issues. So that could be dilapidated houses, businesses, fences that are falling down, things that have come into the right of way that need to be cleaned up, unpermitted construction at homes or businesses, fire hazards, and blight in neighborhoods. For the planning division, we have a full-time planning manager, and we'll soon be blessed with one full-time associate planner. We are not at 100% cost recovery for our fees that come in for planning. And the planning division does more than just processes permits that are supported by those fees. They answer phone calls from the public. They answer emails. They have meetings with residents and business owners who have dreams to build new homes and build new businesses in the community. And so if it was not supported by the general fund, we would not be able to provide that level of service at all. We would not be able to answer the phone as much, not be able to respond to emails. We would take a lot longer in issuing permits. We might not be in compliance with state law. There are a number of other activities that planners do in addition to processing what we call current planning permits, and that's long-range planning. So that's a whole other side of the house in planning where we update our general plans and our specific plans, and we look at new policies like parklets and our objective design standards that we're working through right now. And none of that we collect fees from, so it needs to be subsidized by the general fund. Thank you.
Thank you. One other question that I have. In the slide that reads City Council considerations, the second bullet, this has to do with the road repairs, what is described as road issues, and future debt financing. Although we're not there yet to issue that kind of debt financing, I was wondering how the road issues generally described here mesh with any of the kinds of comments that we received from the online survey. You know, there were very comments on there. Many of them had to do with roads. And so can someone address that, please? Again, I'd like us to understand, as well as the public to understand, how it is that we pay attention and the city does as it can, given its funding, to address the kinds of interest that the public has.
Thank you for the question. Good evening. Hebel Gindi, Public Works Director. There are a number of projects that we will go through when we present the CIP. One of which is for annual $350,000 from Measure S funds for general maintenance, including road repairs such as potholing. The larger projects for pavement rehabilitation, that's for the first year we are planning to kick it off, if approved, by a total amount of $3,250,000, funded by gas tax mostly, $1.5 million, and the potential vehicle impact fee that will be determined at the beginning of June. And these are the more comprehensive work, like slurry seal, cape seal, reconstruction, based on the conditions of the roadways. There is a number of projects that could be bundled together or support one another, such as the pavement rehabilitation with the signing and striping after the road work is completed. I mentioned previously in the last meeting, Pinole Valley Road. It's a complete street project. So beside the pavement rehabilitation, it will include sidewalk repairs, establishment of curb ramps who are deficient or missing, signing and marking. So a combination of infrastructure improvements to maximize the efficiency of our work.
Thank you. I realized that there was one department missing, or one program area, PCTV. Again, the question about if it weren't subsidized, what different programming or service might we see? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Martinez-Rubin. So the deficit that PCTV is looking at for that would receive the general fund subsidy is $207,000 approximately, and that is the equivalent to about 1.5 salaries, give or take some. We operate PCTV right now with 2 full-time employees and a number of part-time employees and volunteers. And so without that general fund subsidy, we would have to decrease the services that we provide. The council meetings production that you see here today would not be the same. It might be run with a Zoom a simple camera and Zoom. We might not be able to run our public access station, which provides the public access to local government and distinctively local programming. We are developing our strategy for PCTV to shift us back to being more of a community media center. And so without that, we wouldn't have the opportunity to work with the community members to allow them to tell their stories, showcase their announcements, their events, their meetings, give them sponsorship opportunities. We're looking to get back into broadcasting local sports and activities and airing those on PCTV. And so without the general subsidy, there would be really none of that. It would just be a really basic, program that we might see operated by maybe a half-time person, which would greatly reduce the amount of programming. And also support to the city staff as well, because PCTV provides audio and visual support for many of their events and to meetings, and so that would be limited as well.
Thank you. Now, this is a question for all, because you work as a team. And Director Epps mentioned something, and I spotted this in the budget details, not part of the presentation, but in the packet that we received last meeting and for today. And that's the length of our council meetings and the televised talent and equipment and service required. So I'm just wondering if we could, as a council, make an attempt at reducing the length of the meetings in general, how much of a difference that would make. And I think that's a calculation that has to be, that could be made. I realize you may not be prepared to answer that today, but has staff, would staff please consider that and let us know as well at some point, whether it makes a difference to have a 6-hour council meeting versus a 3-hour council meeting. I've talked to council members outside of Pinole, and they are surprised at how lengthy our council meetings are. And it's unusual, actually, that they are as lengthy as they are. And so I think it could be worthwhile, informative to all of us to become aware of how it's either time or money or both. And nowadays that we have to be conscientious of both. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Mayor Pro Tem.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. The questions I have, I noticed on the PCTV, the capital outlay dropped pretty significantly, and I know we talked about that capital outlay going down and hiring on staff. I don't know if it was last budget cycle or the cycle before that. We also talked about that with the building and planning fund, and it seemed like there was still a raise in the professional services category while we're hiring on more staff. So I'm just trying to understand. I thought that bringing that staff on was going to be a reduction in professional services, not an increase. So just trying to understand through the city manager what was the delta there?
No, sure. Can you tell us specifically?
Oh, sure, yeah. So professional services in the slide 25, I don't know if that's something we could probably pull back up, but we talked, I want to say like 2 cycles ago or maybe last cycle,
Yes.
about bringing on staff to help reduce the workload, increase the service, and reduce the professional service line item. And I'm just trying to understand, we saw a 11% increase when there was an expectation for that line to drop. I'm just trying to see if there's an additional need there that we missed.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn it over to Director Whalen to explain that, but
Thank you for the question. For the planning and building fund, the big increase in professional services is due to the grant that we received. So a majority of the grant will be going to hiring contractors to actually do the work that we need done. So we have, the grant accounted in the grant line item, and then there's a corresponding amount that is less than that grant amount because we're getting some of that grant for staff time as well.
I see. So we're tying the grant money in. So is this kind of like a one-time thing, or is it additional?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Okay, that's helpful. I just saw that going up, not
and
going down. Like
if we can clarify, that's part of the requirements of this grant as well, that for us to provide that additional service.
Correct.
Yes.
So we do not have the staffing or the expertise to do the work that is in the grant scope. For particularly, we're talking about the climate action plan and some of the work that's involved in that.
Okay, I got it. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Let's see. With the well, hold on one second. Sorry, just got lost. Hold on. A couple more. So I did appreciate the question about the departments and trying to understand what you all need for us to fund. I guess my thing is that we talked about this larger number of reoccurring funding and the level of service that we're trying to achieve. And I know from staff there's been these ups and downs kind of with the budget. We're trying to get to a place where we're consistent and that you guys are adequately funded year on year. Do you feel that this budget is reflective of providing a consistent number for the next few years, or do you see anything, and I guess this is really to the city manager, see anything that would cause us to fluctuate in this outside of that 600,000 from the OPEB that's pretty much blindsided everybody?
I think that's a difficult question for us to really be able to forecast. I think our biggest concerns right now would be OPEB, CalPERS, and some of those ongoing costs, as well as determining what our economy is going to look like as we move forward in regards to our revenue regarding sales tax. That being said, I would say that our budget will probably be fairly consistent unless something unusual occurs along those lines. As far as those particular departments that we are continuing to subsidize, it's partially due to the structure of how we have laid out our budget.
Okay.
So some other city budgets would have included those departments directly into the general fund, and so we would not be consistently subsidizing those departments. I believe Pinole has set it up in this way partially because we have had leaner times and times with more revenue. And so it's set up so that there's a possibility to cut back on some of those services. If we were to cut back on community services, for example, and not subsidize, we would be cutting those services in half. So then we'd be deciding, how much of the senior center programs do we have? Do we continue Tiny Tots? Do we have the pool? And by having the budget in this way, it does allow us to make those determinations if we have to. My expectation is that we won't need to, at least not in the next couple of years, unless unforeseen circumstances occur.
I see. Okay. I guess it's my opinion that, you know, when you think of tiny tots, I mean, having little ones, you need daycare. You're going to get daycare one way or the other, or you're not going to work, right? And I think these are these services that like the senior center, I know because I've been in the senior center for lunch, and I've seen our seniors pack up half of the lunch for dinner. So I know that there's a heavy reliance on that. I heard earlier about food security or food insecurity in our community. And it's a very, very real thing that's happening. And I'm trying to understand, those are services that to me are very critical, as well as our roads. And it seems like we're kind of zeroing in on what's important in Pinole, right? And I think the council, along with our retreat, the information reflected here, I think is really representative of what we're talking about. And then really structuring things so that we can survive long term. And this structure, I mean, I'm seeing the council considerations for the debt financing. I know that if we were to finance our roads and consistently make the payment, our roads are going to see a significant boost in improvement that I don't think Pinole's seen in a long, long time. So I know that this is a big move for us. I guess my big thing is the payment structure, right? And understanding like, okay, well, what number, I guess you guys knew this was probably coming when you put this forward, is like, what number can we actually afford long term? And does that reduce the fluctuations in the cost for roads? Because, well, I mean, honestly, I don't know how much we've actually been putting towards roads outside of what's been presented over the last few years. But really, is 1.4 million or 1.5 million, rather, let's round up, something we can do? 1.6 million. Those are the things I'm trying to find out where we are, so that we can just at least patch that, stitch it up, and send it on its way, and then deal with some of the other programs that we know we're going to need.
So based on our calculations, a combination of funding that would come from gas tax, Measure S, and the possible vehicle impact fee, if that moves forward in the franchise agreement, would make for a payment, and possibly Measure I, would make for a payment that would be comfortable of about 1.5 million.
I see. Okay.
Which is how we structured these models, to be able to have something around that ballpark.
Great. And in that, I know that we're going to see the capital improvement plan, but we talked about signage, lighting, roads, and then we saw some of the park repair, because it seems to me there's these reoccurring things. There's roads, parks, repair, and basically a repair mode, and the services we're providing as far as to the community, and how do we just put that front and center for our staff and the city. But I think this one at least keeps us consistent throughout. So those are the questions, comments. We'll jump to the next person. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Councilmember Toms, please go ahead. Any questions of staff?
Thank you. Most of the budgets for each department have a line item called interdepartmental changes. Is that a pro rata share of like building costs? Or what is that?
No. So it's a credit basically that comes back into or reimbursement to the general fund for administrative services provided to other departments. So for example, an administrative department would be the finance department, the human resources department. We provide those services to, say, the enterprise, the wastewater treatment plant, and in turn there's a reimbursement from that fund to the general fund. So it's a credit.
And then should we look at having some other interdepartmental charges, for instance, where PCTV would charge building and planning for running meetings, or charge the city council budget for broadcasting or community services? Is that something that might help because right now it looks like there's a huge deficit in PCTV, which it really, because of the services that they provide, it really would, kind of balance out where it is still the same deficit. It would just be shared among the departments that use that service.
It's already included.
It is.
So in the line item, charges for services in the PCTV budget, it includes, that department does charge the other departments.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Services.
That's all I have.
Thanks for that. I want to go to some of the council considerations and, of course, the ones that have the most fiscal impact here. One of them is the reserve policy,
Yes.
going from 50%, which is our policy currently, to 25%, and transferring the excess to the Section 115 trust. We've had a chance to discuss it in length with the finance subcommittee meetings and other meetings as well. Can you just explain for the public, folks who may replay this and just watch, what is a Section 115 trust? Why is it more beneficial to store excess funds in that pocket of our funds rather than having it sit idle in our reserves?
Yes. So the Section 115 trust is a trust that was established by the city in 2018. It is managed by PARS, which is Public Agency Retirement Services. And at that time, the city deposited proceeds from the sale of a property. So it started with about $18 million in assets in that trust. And the goal of that was to stabilize the impact of the city's required contribution to CalPERS pension. So what the city does is there's a formula that was instituted at that time. So in any given budget year, we look at the estimated budget for the city's required contribution to CalPERS, and we subtract out the actual amount that the city paid in the baseline year, which at that time was the fiscal year 2018-19, and we take that difference. We look at that as the impact of the rise in pension costs, and we take that difference and withdraw that from the trust into the general fund to help offset some of those costs on an annual basis. Important to note that the assets that sit in that trust does gain interest. So PARS manages the trust for us, and they invest the funds on our behalf and in alignment with our pension investment policy. So we have a portfolio of what is called a moderately conservative portfolio where our assets are safe. That's the number one goal, is to make sure that our funds are safe. We aren't losing money by investing in risky investments. And it's also very liquid as well. So that is setting aside those funds for the impact of the rise in pension costs on an annual basis. We could also use that fund to set aside funds for other post-employment benefits. Right now, we're on a pay-as-you-go basis, and we have $1.4 million budgeted for the upcoming fiscal year. And what that means is that we reimburse retirees for their medical costs, and we also pay the medical premiums from the general fund just on an annual basis. If we were able to set aside funds and allow it to gain interest, just like the pension funds that we have set aside, that helps us to leverage those funds, because we'll be paying out on an annual basis, we're also gaining interest, so that could extend the lifespan of those funds. And as the city, say we experience surpluses at the end of any fiscal year, we could also make the decision, or staff could recommend, that we put those additional funds into that trust. So that is how it's set up right now. With moving the funds from the general reserve, we would be leveraging higher interest income on those funds. Right now, we are investing primarily, so the city invests primarily in certificates of deposit, so very safe instruments, or the standard mutual funds. But if we were to transfer that portion over to those trust funds, we would see higher returns on our investments as well. Mm-hmm. Those are some of the benefits of making that change.
Thank you. So all in all, it would be more fiscally productive to have those excess funds sit in the Section 115 trust rather than, Gotcha. And then just a reminder for folks too, I'm not sure if it's in a report here, if I've caught it, but in neighboring jurisdictions of our size in this county, it's around 25%, which is the norm for
25% is the average, and that's about 3 months of expenditure coverage.
Gotcha. And the exception to that I've seen was Emeryville, which still has 50%. And what's sort of the rationale or discussion there?
The higher. Well, Emeryville is a bigger city, right? It's a little different there. I didn't go into detail about why it's that high, or I haven't been in contact with their finance director at least, but I could definitely look into that. But it's just a very different city from
Thank you.
Pinole.
So funny. It seems to be bigger of a city, but actually the population is less than Pinole, which is really curious.
Exactly, right. So it's bigger in a different way.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. A question on the debt financing. It's obviously such a big part of the considerations here. One thing I appreciated about Councilor Martinez-Rubin's questions to staff was vocalizing what can we practically expect if we don't make certain decisions here. With the current revenues that we have coming into Pinole and the different maintenance problems we have here as well that we're trying to confront, if we don't move forward in some sort of debt financing model, for our road rehabilitation, what can we practically expect with our road quality? And how does that sort of change with the models that we have here?
So, as was presented in this presentation, right now we've only been able to do some basic road maintenance each year, and that would probably stay ongoing. So we have, over the past few years, been able to save up about enough money, about $2.5 million, which Director El Gundi has prepared in the CIP as a project to be able to take some road projects moving forward. That would exhaust, though, what we have currently saved. So we would have some additional funding coming in from potentially the vehicle impact fee and from gas tax and so forth. But that amount is limited. Roads are very, very expensive. As you all know, we have about $60 million worth of road projects, and that's a very comprehensive list. So that includes everything from some lower level maintenance to full reconstruction. We are very fortunate in that we have Director El Gundi, who is very familiar with doing road projects and knows how to leverage funding as much as possible. But by doing some sort of debt financing project, we would be able to leverage those funds, do a larger projects all at once, and both get lower prices because of economies of scale, and then also make a big significant impact.
Thank you. And in terms of pavement condition index, PCI, if we move forward with some sort of debt financing, how would that impact where we are right now, and what can we expect in the next few years as it goes on? Would it stay the same? Would it increase?
Oh, no,
increase.
It would definitely improve. It would
Gotcha.
absolutely improve. That would be the entire reason of doing this. Right now, the way that our roads are currently let's see, how do I put it? Degrading, for lack of a better term. We are losing about 2 points annually. So the longer we take to go forward and improve our roads, the worse condition they will be, which also means the more expensive it will be to repair them in the future, because we won't be able to do some of the processes that we can do now. We would have to go to full reconstruction on some of the roads that could be saved right now if we moved forward.
Yeah, the way we're funding road rehabilitation currently, it's not even maintaining the current PCI. It's going lower each year, is what you're saying?
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
Got it. Okay. Any questions? Other questions from council to staff? Mayor Pro Tem?
It was just a thought that I had to kind of piggyback off of your question. So we're understanding that it's not 2 this year to the next year to the other. It's going to be like 2, 3, 4. Like it's not linear, I guess is what I'm trying to understand. When we say the reduction or degrading of the road, I think it's important for us to know that when we put money in, it's also not, we're going to get a lot more benefit if we strategically pick the appropriate roads that'll that'll help us more. So I think the debt financing and I just want to make this comment. I think the debt financing is going to pay. It's going to pay more than what we actually are getting here. We're going to get more value, I guess, is what we're going to look at by putting this investment in, because roads that are in better shape don't degrade as fast and are exponentially cheaper to maintain. So it's kind of one of these things where I think it's important for the public to know that this investment is going to be a long-term investment that'll see the 20-year mark. So if we were to do a 15-year debt financing, there's a good chance we're going to experience a solid 5 to 10 years of roads still improving at that point, just because of the maintenance that's going to be able to be provided by our team. I guess 2040 is about the 15 years. It's about 2040 for us to see the end of that cycle. So I think it's important to note that as well. It's that, this is a long-term investment. So, and just a thought that I had, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. With that being said, City Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes, Irma Ruport and Rafael Menes.
And online as well. Do we have any folks?
Good afternoon again, Mayor, Council, staff, members of the public. My name is Rafael Menes, a resident of Pinole, and I have a few questions with regards to this item. First off, on page number 12 of the agenda, under the one-time, table number 2, General Fund one-time budget items and capital projects, it notes that there's a charge of $20,000 for CERT program supplies. And I was wondering how long those supplies are expected to last for. Is it like basically going to be an annual expense, or are they expected to last for a decade, 20 years? How perishable are they basically? On page number 18 and a few pages following is discussing various interest rates associated with the debt financing the city could take out for the road projects. And I was curious as to what rates the finance department thinks the city would actually be eligible for, and what the determinants of those rates would be, including the timing of deciding to take on that financing. On page number 105, I noticed an unitemized item for equipment maintenance of $100, basically like WD-40 oil to keep the equipment running, or because usually there's stuff more directly itemized, but there's just $100. On page 109, as sort of a typographical note, I note that the first instance of Pinole Community Television is listed in all caps, whereas typically it's noted as only the primary letters capitalized, and also that its acronym should be noted in parentheses there, as is typically done. And then flipping over to the presentations, for the Building and Planning Fund, I believe I recall there were some grants related to the city's pro-housing designation and climate impact. And I was curious whether those grants were carrying forward into future years, or whether they'd all been accounted for already in the financial year 24-25 budget. And let's see. Close out of that. On page number 26, I noticed a 2,970% increase in miscellaneous revenue for PCTV, and I was curious as to the cause for that increase, because I couldn't see that looking deeper into the budget, so I'd like it if that could be broken out a bit more clearly. On page number 29, I'm not sure whether the plan is to simply not make withdrawals from the Section 115 trust and just use the funds that would have gone into the reserve to offset the withdrawals, or to make withdrawals from the fund and then also shift funds from the reserve to basically backfill those withdrawals, because it seems like it would be simpler to just not make the withdrawals in the first place. And then finally, oh wait, no, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening again. Thank you for the report. Markeisha and everybody here, thank you for the report. Very informative. I appreciate it. Also, I would like to add the two council strategic priorities, because of what's going on out there with no grants and no resources available. Start prioritizing these 2 pages of the priorities that we have set, because in case we run out of money, I don't want to see us kind of get in trouble and say, well, we should have done this one instead of the other one. And the other thing is, Public Works on the streets. I would appreciate that Sanjay had his list of projects from last year, and he always gave us an update. I'd appreciate it. We could bring it back. Yes, streets need a lot of help. If you're going to make up a complete street, remember that it's a complete street that we utilize. 2 cul-de-sacs in my neighborhood were done, completely done, and it's hardly ever traveled. So we made mistakes in the past. I will speak to the public director regarding this, that maybe the way they grade them and review them of the streets to be repaired should be looked at a little bit better. And the last thing I want to say is PCTV. We have a lot of issues with PCTV. I would like to see Dave Snell, who's been here forever. He's taking care of PCTV, taking care of us. He's been ignored, neglected, and I have a feeling we need to bring him on board. He knows what he wants, he knows what he needs, and we should give it to him. I don't think transferring him over to city manager, and we have a lot of new staff, mayor and council. It's ridiculous to have someone with the expertise and experience that Dave Snell has in PCTV and ignore him. I think it's ridiculous. So in my opinion, bring him on board, let him report to us what he really needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Online, we have Debbie Long.
Good evening, Council, again. I have several questions. I'll start with the one that's most important in my mind to me. It has to do with drawing down of the reserves. And I wasn't clear whether you were drawing it down to 25% or you were taking 25% from the account. So that was one question I had. And the other had to do with the fact that you're transferring it into the 115. Good idea. But this is really just offsetting what you've spent, and as far as I'm concerned, and other council members, incorrectly over the other years by using these funds to offset new employee costs, benefit costs. It was never meant for that. It was to offset increased costs to the employees, not the major costs where they began at. So I would like to have more discussion on that. It was by resolution. So it would also take you to vote on another resolution, taking that one back and having another one. And I don't understand how you can pass a budget based upon some action that still needs to be done before you can put it into the budget. Just seems to me like you're robbing Peter to pay Paul when you draw down your reserves to put them back into the 115, for which you already transferred money out of into the general fund. The other items that I have to do with the transfers. Let's see, the transfer in, or I guess mid-year budget items. When you make those adjustments, then you true it up for the end of the year. And when you show the difference, it's based upon the true up number. I'd also like to see an extra column that shows from the original budget to the ending budget and your new budget, what the item is. In many cases, it's quite a bit on that one. Also, I was wondering if you could address your franchise fees, if some of those could be increased under the franchise agreements that happen up. I don't know how often that happens, but certainly it would be something to look at. When we talked about the roads, I recall Measure P being sold to this community as almost a roads tax. While it couldn't be identified as such because it would take a 2/3 to pass, it was promised. And nowhere in this presentation was it talked about the Measure P funds, the new funds being used for the road. I also agree wholeheartedly with the debt financing for the roads. I think it's better to do it now than try to just drag it down the road. It's kind of like when we replaced our schools. If we had not replaced all of our schools back when we did, it would have cost, probably 10 times the amount that what it cost then. So I think that's a good idea. I'd also like to keep in mind that I think all of our employees, particularly our part-time employees, should not be paid less than someone working at McDonald's. And right now, I think we have a few classifications that do that, and maybe that's why it's hard for us to get all those positions.
Thank you very much. With those two public commenters, there were quite a few questions. I think Director Guillory, I'm not sure if you were able to track each one, but welcome if you're able to answer those questions to the city manager. Or City Manager Young, if at all. Or if you want to get back in writing, that's more comfortable for you, and that's.
Yes, I think some of them are for the actual departments too.
Got it.
Yeah, we'll get back to them in writing.
Sounds good. And City Clerk, we have their contact information as well. Perfect. Thank you so much. With that being said, we'll bring it back to comments of the council. We'll start with Councilor Thoms. If you have any comments or motions.
Sure. I want to thank staff for the report and thank members of the public for their comments. I think it is worthwhile just to clarify further, and this could be, in the report that comes back to us next time, answering some of the questions that were brought up, whether or not reserve funds are going to be drawn down and used against, partially used to feed the 115 trust and partially used for the budget. However that's proposed, I think we just need to clarify it. I am pleased to hear that there's support among the council members and members of the public for going out for debt financing to really make a dent in our needs for roads. And let's see, I think that's basically, I did have one, just a clarification. I did get a request regarding the reserve policy. And if we adopted that by resolution, do we need to notice it when we bring the budget forward, notice it as modifying the reserve policy and rescinding a previous resolution and then adopting a new one? I just want to make sure that we're prepared to address that in whatever way is appropriate. And that's the end of my comments.
Thank you. I think City Attorney, you want to respond to that?
Happy to, through the chair. So yes, if we're receiving direction at this point from the City Council, if there was direction to reduce the reserve policy, we would bring that as a separate item, and it would be an amendment to, we have a policy, I'm forgetting the name of it, it was approved at the last meeting, but it's the reserve policy is actually part of that policy. We wouldn't need to rescind a prior resolution, it would just be the formal approval of an amendment to that existing policy, and that would, in effect, reduce the reserve.
And if the council directs that, would that be brought forward back to council before the final budget would be approved?
Just through the chair, yeah. If the direction of the council is to reduce the reserve policy to 25%, we could bring that forward concurrent with the budget.
Got it. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, any comments?
Just along those lines, is that, do you need a motion and direction from the council, or is that something that is understood? We need a motion?
Through the chair, I think a motion would be great, just so that we have clear direction for future action.
Okay. Well, so I'll make a motion to reduce. Yeah, I don't know if when I get through.
Maybe we can do
comments
first, and we'll come back to you.
No problem.
Yeah, Councilor Martinez-Rubin, if you have any comments.
I'll echo what Councilmember Thoms asked about, and small addition to that is the interpretation of how that 150 trust was meant to be used when it was initiated back in 2018 and how it has been used and how it's proposed to be used, whether there has been some consistency or not. That keeps coming up. So let's clarify that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy, I'm not sure, I don't see your hand raised, but still want to pass it to you if you have any comments.
Yeah, thank you. I did have comments. Thank you, Mayor. Again, just want to thank our city staff. Thank you so much for this, our presentation for today, Director Guillory, City Manager Young. Also, of course, just want to commend, Mayor Pro Tem Tave. I know you've been speaking about the debt financing, and so it's kind of really, it's great to kind of see all of this come into our kind of what seems like, yeah, our execution of our long-term financial plan really happening in action. I was just, I know Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Tavy were going to make a motion. I wanted to ensure that in that motion that we also at least consider both again modeling the recommendations that were provided to staff, the 1% COLA, and just making sure that was a part of at least just the expiration of that. I don't know what you were going to motion, but I would like to at least see an exploration of that. And then again, I've mentioned before, but just I would like to see us continue what was our current budget cycle and moving or increasing our city council travel and training budget as well. So those are the two things I would like to see. And then I did see or hear kind of a focus, which I probably will talk about at the next item, which is like that roads, roof repair, and parks. And so I just wanted to name that as kind of what this budget is sharing with us. This goes back to, I guess, really a gratitude that I have for staff is, you know, we are really focused on, you know, a sustainable budget. And in that, we're focused on the roads and the rooftops that need to be repaired, of course, the repairs that we need to make in our parks as well. So just really excited about where we're at right now. It's a long time coming. I think there's some questions, of course, from the public about certain things and in the way maybe, you know, with the trust that could be answered. But, you know, generally, I think our staff have been doing a really good job at leaning into this council's direction as it relates to some of the priorities, specifically on our roads. But of course, again, those rooftop repairs and repairs of our structural our infrastructure as well. So just wanted to thank you all again for the hard work and of course, finding those innovative grant opportunities too.
Thank you. We'll bring it back to comments or motions of the council.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask one question. We did have, I think the speaker had mentioned, or one of the public speakers mentioned, reduce reserve level from 50% to 25%. That is more than 2.7 million. So my question is that meant to be 50% and reduced by 25% or two?
No, it's reducing it to 25% of total ongoing expenditures, which is the $7.4 million is the amount that would need to remain in the fund, as that is 25% of our total ongoing general fund expenditures.
Got it. And so the two, okay. So, yeah, I'd like to make a motion to reduce the reserve level from 50% to 25% of total ongoing general fund expenditures.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion of the council on the motion? All right, with that being said, City Clerk Bill, please call roll.
I was going to ask, I'm sorry, Mayor, does that motion include the direction to staff about what to do with that money, or we'll be talking about that at the next meeting?
Next meeting.
It seems like a good motion.
I probably thank you for that. I probably should modify the full bullet point. So we'll motion to reduce the reserve level from 50% to 25% of total ongoing general fund expenditures, and transfer the difference into Section 115 trust to set aside funds for other post-employment benefits. That's the motion.
Thank you. Councilor Martinez-Rubin, did you still want to second that amended motion?
I'll second that.
Great. City Clerk Bill, please call roll.
Councilmember Toms.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Martinez-Rubin.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Tave.
Yes.
And Mayor Sasai.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Any other further comments or motions from the council? All right. With that being said, thank you, Director Guillory, very much for your presentation. And we'll move to item 5B, which is fiscal year 25-26 proposed baseline budget and 5-year capital improvement plan. Director El Guindy, welcome back. Good evening.
I'm so sorry, Mayor. I may have missed something, but I'm not understanding the next steps. Can staff explain what the next steps are in terms of the conversation we've just had about those three funds? Or are we just going to come back to that next week or the week after next?
So we can provide more information either now or when we come back with the next agenda item, however council would prefer.
For those in terms of how those funds are going to be allocated.
Yes, as far as the reserve policy, that can come forward with a staff report and an amendment and a discussion of where exactly those funds are going to remain.
Okay.
Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, I mean, there were other recommendations there that you had made. Are you looking for motions for those too, or is it some type of direction?
I wouldn't, well, so if, I would love a little additional direction. It feels like we cut this a little short. However, we also have the opportunity, since this is a workshop, to continue that discussion even after we've just started in on the CIP budget. So however council would like to proceed.
Actually, I'll open up to other comments or motions of the council if y'all would like to add on to that.
So I'd like to make a motion to explore the debt financing from 15 million to 20 million scenarios for a 15-year period.
I'll second that. Any comments on the motion? If not, City Clerk Bell, please call roll for that.
Council members Toms,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Tave,
Yes.
Mayor Sasai.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Any other comments or motions from the council?
Keep
All
going.
right. Go ahead, Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. I want to just also move that staff consider in its next budget development the 1% COLA increase, as well as the again the consistency of the budget of what the 2024-2025 budget was to 2025-2026 for the city council budget.
Can I make a clarification?
yeah.
So the 1% COLA was provided for council as an example of what 1% would be. We are still in labor negotiations, and the labor negotiations will come back to council in closed session with their recommendations for further approval. So I'm not sure if council wants to look at that further, or if you want to wait for that, for those closed session items.
I would love to wait further. I just, because it was part of your presentation, I assumed that staff wanted some direction there. So it was added to the presentation. Why? Or if there's no needed council just direction there, was it just, can you repeat why it was added to the presentation?
Absolutely. And I apologize for any confusion. It was provided in the presentation for council to be aware of what 1% would look like. So as the labor negotiations are continuing to move forward, just recognizing that that's not currently in our budget, and that will be a potential additional cost.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, well, I guess we can wait on that piece.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, so I'll make another motion to fund the associate engineer through the sewer fund, the sewer enterprise fund, not to exceed 175. Is that?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Thank you. Any discussion, motion? If not, City Clerk Bell, please call roll.
Council members Toms,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Tave,
Yes.
Mayor Sasai.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because this is a workshop, those motions are to bring those items back, and we would have to vote on them again.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just to
please.
clarify, so there's an opportunity for whatever reason, staff, I don't know, goes back, runs the calculations and says, oh, no, let's not do that. There is an opportunity for that to get edited out. Okay. Cool.
All right.
Are we missing?
All right. Anything else from council on this item? If not, thank you, Councilor Murphy, for catching that. And with that being said, we'll move on officially now to item 5B. And welcome in Director Alguindi.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council members. Good evening. The agenda packet contains information on the 5-year capital improvement plan. The presentation tonight is going to focus on the first fiscal year, 25-26. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. As you know, the 5-year CIP is funded by various funding sources, including measure funds, gas tax, and development impact fees, and potentially vehicle impact fees in the future. The 5-year CIP contains a total of 50 projects, or I should say 45 projects and 5 infrastructure assessments. With that, the first year of fiscal year 25-26 has a number of shortlisted projects of 24 under the various categories and 2 assessment infrastructure. Namely 3 under facilities, 2 under parks, 6 under sanitary sewer, 2 under stormwater, 11 streets and roads, and 2 infrastructure assessments. So the primary focus was on sanitary sewer, funded by the enterprise fees, as well as the road projects. Next slide, please. Staff is requesting tonight your direction on priorities of the projects, whether changes should be made to the projects, including removal, even if the project is in the 5-year plan, not just in the first fiscal year. And if there is any input on the bundling of the projects and funding sources. Next slide, please. The first project under facilities has been decreased in terms of the cost estimate because we would like to focus on the immediate needs. We're currently working on repairs for the heaters. We would like to replace pipes and the pumping for the circulation. So we estimated that we will be needing about $100,000 in fiscal year 25-26, with additional upgrades in following years. The second project is expected to be carried out over a 2-year period, with the first year including the local match of $75,000 of Measure S funds and $595,000 of the Climate Implementation Grant to transition the city fleet into zero-emission vehicles, as well as the construction of the EV chargers. And we will be working with PG&E on this project as well, because they have some programs that could support us further. The third project for City Hall of $400,000, that's also for necessary upgrades in the near term. For example, repairs to the doors and the access is sloping. And now we have the rain water coming into the building on the other side. The painting on the outside, some retrofitting to better suit the needs of staffing on both levels of the building. So various improvements that are needed in the near term. Next slide, please. The annual improvements to the parks is proposed to commence with the dog park in fiscal year 25-26 with a proposed estimate of 200,000. And I should mention that we're also expecting additional funds from other sources to help us with the upgrades needed in the area. The second project under parks is for rehabilitating the 2 soccer fields, including replacement of the irrigation systems and the turf, for a total of 250,000. Next slide, please. Under the sanitary sewer program, I should mention that all projects are proposed to be funded by enterprise fees, and as included in the presentation of Director Guillory and voted on, would be supported by an associate engineer. Because we're proposing, for example, 6 sewer projects in the coming fiscal year, in addition to 1 infrastructure assessment. The first project is for replacement of 2 blowers for a total of 280,000 to avoid any downtime. The equipment that we currently have no longer have parts. So there is a risk involved. The second project is a program that I believe was requested by City Council in the past to support the property owners in replacement of their lateral sewer for a total of 150,000. And we will be bringing forward for council consideration the guidelines for reimbursing these funds. The third project is a larger scale project for replacement of the effluent pipes with the appropriate capacity to avoid the increased pressure during the storm seasons, and that is estimated to cost 650,000 in this coming fiscal year. Next slide, please. Another planned projects for rehabilitation of the secondary clarifier for a cost of 425,000. In addition to improvements to the lab, actually the lab that's at the plant is in a degraded state. We've already obtained some codes for replacement of the equipments. Our internal team will assist with demolishing the cabinets and so forth, but this funding is for the replacement cabinets for a total of 150,000, including equipment as well. The third project is for rehabilitation and or replacement of the sewer pumps and the force main pipes at a couple of locations under San Pablo Avenue and Hazel Street for a total of 850,000. It was initially for one project, and now we're including 2 locations. For the stormwater projects on the next slide, please. This annual program for general upgrades of smaller scale improvements to prevent the flooding at certain locations that we've been experiencing over the years. And it's for $120,000 from Measure S funds. Stormwater is generally funded by Measure S. The second project is mainly focused on meeting state requirements and regional requirements and avoiding the potential of being subjected to penalties, such as by installing trash capture devices and minimize the waste that goes into the creek. And that's annual amount is $150,000 by Measure S. And I should also mention that an additional project that was pushed for fiscal year 26-27, the Roble Road stormwater upgrade. We're working this week, and it's likely to come forward for your consideration on May 20th, the design and environmental review of that project, so that it would be shovel-ready when we get to 26-27 for construction purposes. And it would also be funded by Measure S. I confirmed with Director Guillory that we have accumulation of funds from past years that we would be able to utilize. Next slide, please. This slide starts our the overall list of roadway-related projects. Some of the projects included on the list here are not rated as part of the survey that we've received today, are not rated very highly, such as street lighting and pavement marking, but these improvements are really an integral part of roadway projects, and they are necessary also to meet standards and to address potential liabilities. The first project on the slide is the general pavement rehabilitation project with a total of $3,250,000 as broken down, $750,000 Measure J, $1 million of the potential vehicle impact fees, and the $1.5 million gas tax that has been accumulating in the past few years. I should also refer that currently the total amount of funding that's being proposed for the 5-year plan for pavement rehabilitation is $20 million. And mostly coming from year 2 through year 5 is mostly coming from debt financing. And the reason it was proposed from year 2 to year 5 is we're expecting to have sufficient Measure I funds by then to pay towards the debt. The second project is for sidewalk repairs, which could be incorporated with the pavement rehabilitation projects so that we can complete corridors and increase their PCI and other upgrades and not worry about them for many years to come. I mentioned Pinole Valley Road, and in the following year would be Tennant. This is a bike corridor as well, as you will see in September as part of the ATP that will come for your review and approval. So there are assumed changing the roadway functionality to better accommodate multi-modes of transportation. And one of them would be the sidewalk improvements. in addition to other deficiencies in the city. This would be an annual program with the first year at $200,000. The following, also a related project, would be for ADA upgrades and the construction of curb ramps. Next slide, please. I previously mentioned, and I believe it was emphasized, the need for enhancing our pavement marking and signing. We're quite behind in a number of areas within our city. And there are requirements that we have to meet in terms of retroreflectivity to avoid any liability in case of collisions. Similarly is the enhancements to street lighting, whether by supplementing the PG&E lighting that we have on some corridors, or by enhancing our own street lighting as well. Our street lights is about 1/3 of the total. And I should also mention that yesterday we started a meeting with PG&E for coordination purposes. We will have quarterly meetings with them. They have some programs that we could benefit from to reduce our energy usage. Like just during the meeting, we found $20,000 to be saved on our annual usage. And they also have programs that could be coordinated in terms of our enhancements to the street lighting that we can supplement what we're proposing here. The third project would be upgrades for our traffic signals, and working with the county that maintains and operates the signals for us for a total amount of $200,000 to better meet our standards or state standards in terms of ADA compliance, visibility, and so forth. Next slide, please. This is one of our major projects, the San Pablo Avenue Bridge projects. We're currently working on the PE phase. We're expecting to complete the CEQA and NEPA environmental review by the end of the year, with the design in the coming calendar year. So it's part of the coming fiscal year. And therefore, we're budgeting $1,674,000 approximately, and that's from grants, in addition to $240,000 of Measure S funds for local match. I should mention, however, that we are trying to reduce the match through another grant. We're working with WICTAC, and it's coming to their board on the 23rd of this month to extend the duration of a grant by 4 years. And we're working with them on adjusting the agreement to make it more flexible and have better usage for it to fund some of our local match. The next project is also included to utilize the HSIP grant fund before it's too late. And that would be for improving pedestrian crossing safety at a couple of locations. And with the local match coming out of the arterial streets rehabilitation. The third project on this slide, which would be combined possibly with other projects such as pavement rehabilitation, that would be for traffic calming. We have a list of locations that are outstanding based on input over the years from the community on what they are looking for in their neighborhoods, and we're hoping to be able to gradually tackle it. I should also mention with regards to the Old Town traffic calming projects, I would suggest keeping that until after we construct the bridge. We're working with Caltrans currently on a specific capacity bridge, like 4 lanes in addition to the bike lanes and sidewalk. We wouldn't want to change that design. We always have the flexibility to change our roadway configurations in the downtown area in the future, but we wouldn't be able to go back and change the configuration of the bridge. With that being said, we could still use some of the funding from the traffic calming projects and possibly the street lighting projects to improve furniture, to install string lighting in the meantime in the downtown area. Next slide, please. These are the two remaining projects being considered and being proposed for fiscal year 25-26. One of them is the annual maintenance of our roadways that's been budgeted over the years for $350,000 from Measure S. And the second is for updating our ADA transition plan. And we're in the process of putting SS4A grant application to try to fund this plan update rather than using the proposed funding. We're actually trying to expand the scope to also develop complete street design guidelines. But these funds could potentially be used as a local match. Next slide, please. With regards to the 2 infrastructure assessments being proposed, they will serve our future planning in identifying our needs and the improvements citywide for the sewer system as well as the stormwater system. So one is for the recycled water feasibility study, and the second is for the storm drain master plan, with the proposed funding at $80,000 and a total of $275,000 respectively. Next slide, please. We've made adjustments to the projects brought forward for your consideration today based on input during the Finance Subcommittee meeting on April 24th, and then the City Council review on May 6th. With your input today, we will go back and make additional changes to address your comments and direction. And the revised CIP will be brought forward on June 3rd. There is also an information item that we will go through the proposal with the Planning Commission on June 9th. Before the final CIP come back to City Council on June 17th. Next slide, please. For the first fiscal year of the CIP, the total budget, and I do apologize of how small the numbers are, but the total budget proposed is almost 12 million, 11,965,894, including $1 million of potential vehicle impact fees. The total for the 5-year plan adds up to 64,105,894. That's including the potential debt financing from year 2 through year 5. Next slide, please. With that, I conclude my presentation, and I'll be happy to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And I think just to set the stage first, just want to say thank you and City Manager Young for your work on the CIP. I'm very pleased about the CIP doc that's before us today. I think the main reason why is because I think just in our conversations for the past few years and this year especially, there's been frustration that sometimes CIP projects don't come to fruition, even though it's on the CIP. So I think this sets a really realistic stage for us to set our expectations and see what can we reasonably get done in the next year. So thank you for that. And also thank you for the 148 participants who responded to the survey for the prioritization of the CIP projects. Just want to note here that the top 3 listed for CIP projects that folks consider most important for Pinole to start this fiscal year is number 1, road rehabilitation program, number 2, improvements to city parks, and number 3, stormwater system upgrades and trash capture. So as we ask our questions and have our discussion, just want to keep that in mind for all of us here. So that being said, I'll pass it off to council questions, starting with Councilor Murphy, if you have any.
Hey, thank you, Mayor, for that. Thank you also. I was going to bring up the survey that we did and so for as a city. So thank you for our staff for putting that together, and thank you to the residents for giving us your voices. We hear you loud and clearly. City Manager Young and Director El-Gwindi, thank you so much for this phenomenal presentation. I actually have no questions except for one. And my only question is, with that 12 million estimate that you have for this next rendition of our CIP this next year, and given the status of of your department, are you confident that these projects can get done that you're proposing this next year?
Thank you for the question. Yes, with the addition of associate engineer position and filling the existing vacancies, I am confident that we could accomplish completing the 26 projects before you.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like, thank you again, Director El-Gwindi, for your presentation. We are so lucky to have you. And so just really excited about this presentation itself and looking forward to the future together.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Martinez-Rubin for questions of staff.
Thank you. So in the budget summary, there is the word potential next to potential vehicle impact fee. So that is an impact fee we have not yet collected on, but has been considered by staff. That would be coming from where? How?
That would be coming from the franchise agreement with Republic Services.
Okay. Thank
and so that will come forward on June 3rd with a more information.
Thank you. Okay. And then the growth impact fees, there's 1.8 expected, not this year, but next year. Is that for tell me where that would be coming from? Projects that haven't yet gotten permits, where would those be?
I apologize, which funding category?
The growth impact fees?
Oh, that's the development impact fees. So that would be that would be development generated, and based on my knowledge, we have accumulation of, and Director Guillory will respond to that as well.
Is that on? Oh. That's correct. It's an accumulation of development impact fees over the years. So the balance currently is about $3.2 million. So we're allocating a portion of that to projects for the upcoming fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem Dave.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I don't have questions. I have more comments than anything, so I'll probably just wait. But I kind of want to talk a little bit about clustering projects and figuring out how we can do the most with the money we have. So I guess we'll come back to that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks. Councilor Toms.
Yes, thank you for the project or for the presentation. I had a question that I'm sorry I didn't reach out to you earlier. So if you're not prepared, maybe if it's something that you can address later. But some of our counterparts in other sanitary districts have talked about the need for significant capital improvements that need to be made to address new nitrate regulations for effluent. Do we need to look forward to that, or did our, rebuilding the sewage treatment plant already foresee that and address it?
Yes, we've foreseen that. With that being said, there are additional upgrades needed, and they are accounted for in this coming fiscal year as well as in following years.
Okay, so these capital projects address that that need. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. A few questions here. So maybe this was answered in the last meeting that you had, but for the Plum Street parking lot improvements project, and I think it was Mr. Menace, you had come forward and said there was feedback from Planning Commission. What is the feedback? Was it particularly the chain link fence not being in alignment with the general plan and standards there? Is that correct? Anything to add there?
Yes, and also in looking at the plan, it would be redesigned differently to meet the needs of the PD departments as well as the public. For now, this project has been pushed to fiscal year 26-27.
Thank you. And between now and then, would there be sort of like a presentation from staff about the redesign at some point before it comes back for the next CIP, the next round?
Most likely, if it is going to be coming back, I think we need to discuss internally and do an assessment if this is a project that we still continue to recommend.
Thank you. And see the Old Town, so there's two projects here I think overlap is my question. I know there's the Old Town traffic calming project and there's also a overall traffic calming program project. Both are in the CIP. Where does it overlap and where does it not overlap? And can you just give more specifics about those two projects for us?
The overall traffic calming program annually would give us more flexibility to implement improvements depending on the need throughout the city. And as I mentioned, we have an outstanding list of locations. With that being said, some of the funding could be utilized in Old Town, and that's what I'm proposing to do as part of fiscal year 25-26. Old Town revitalization and traffic calming project is likely to cost more than what's currently being proposed. That's why it's being postponed to a future year for not only because of accommodation of the San Pablo Bridge project, but also for a better the conceptual design and complete designs to better accommodate parking, revitalize the downtown area to better serve the businesses. A number of items that need to be included.
Gotcha. So the overall traffic calming program will sort of target different areas of Pinole. May not include Old Town Pinole, but may include other parts that are in need. And it's something that is dictated from information from as a local road safety plan, or how is that sort of, so per year, how is that sort of calculated?
It's going to be based on information in the local road safety plan that was completed back in 2023. as well as from the community request, because we've developed a list of requests over time. So based on the analysis and the guidelines, which will be updated, will determine which measures should be implemented where. And to clarify, we're also planning some limited improvements in Old Town using the account.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. So staff will just prioritize that based off of the information that we have, what should be prioritized first and foremost based off the safety needs of the community.
Yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned, I know there's some, I think you said in the accommodating for the bridge project, we may not be able to actually redesign our roads along downtown Pinole, Old Town Pinole area at the moment. I know that project specifically is deferred for 1 year. You mentioned stuff like, I think was aesthetically revitalizing downtown Pinole as one way to do that. And I think that may be done through the overall traffic calming program, or not. Can you clarify that?
For fiscal year 25-26, what we could potentially address are the smaller scale elements, such as street furnishings, the enhancements of lighting and adding string lighting, for example. My reference to the San Pablo Bridge is regarding the capacity, because if we were to reduce the capacity on the roadway, we could potentially cause an impact on or a reaction on Caltrans side by saying then you don't need a 4-lane bridge. We do need a 4-lane bridge to cover traffic forecast in the long term. And there will also be construction traffic while we work on the bridge. So ideally, we would change the roadway configurations through the downtown area in the future.
Thank you. Big concern from the public really is traffic safety along Old Town Pinole specifically, especially because folks live there and consume from those businesses. And we've all been around there and seen how bad the speeding issue is and folks running red lights around there. There's two things I'm seeing as sort of like not part of the Old Town traffic calming program, but still sort of curing that problem. The first is, I know there's the safety improvements on arterial roadways project, and it's the 3 rectangular rapid flash beacons. One of them is on San Pablo Avenue in Quinnen. And I think is there anything else in the meantime that's here in the CIP that is being done to treat that problem?
We will try to change the feel of the downtown area. Although this is not the final plan per se, we will try to implement some improvements like upgrading curb ramps, the enhancements to the pedestrian crossings, the upgrades and lighting to a limited extent, depending on the availability of funds, because those are relatively small projects, as well as the furnishings. I believe we can enhance the feel of the downtown area for all road users without necessarily changing the cross-section of the roadway currently.
Thank you. One last question here. So please give me 1 second to get that out. Oh yes, the Pinole Smart Signals project. I saw it's budgeted for fiscal year 26-27. Is that just staff capacity? Is it the reason why, or?
It's not just staff capacity. I was part of one meeting on this project. The project is not progressing as fast as was initially planned, and a number of meetings have been canceled. So I did check on it. We're safe to have it.
Gotcha. So just neighboring jurisdictions in Contra Costa County who were to benefit from this project, they're experiencing the same.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions. Any other questions from council before we go to public comment? If not, we'll go to public comment. City Clerk Bell, do we have any?
Rafael Menes and Irma Ruport.
Good evening. For the final time, Mayor, Council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Rafael Mess. I'm a resident of Pinole. And I have a few questions with regards to the capital improvement program. First, I was notified of the survey when I got the Pinole Pulse item on, I believe it was May 9th. Was it posted elsewhere for the public to be aware of prior to that? And if so, how was it posted? I'd like a little bit more clarity on that, because at the time I got around to noticing it, the survey had actually closed, unfortunately. Secondly, with regards to the Planning Commission's sort of review of various items, I think the mayor partially addressed some of the questions I had with regards to FA 2302, but I also want to follow up on that because it's still noted down for financial year 2026/27 as having its financing for planning, design, and construction, and you can see that on page 289 of the agenda packet. But the project start is still noted as July 1st of this year, which would fall in FY 25-20, or wait, no, that's 7/1/26, not 7/1/25. That's right, it would be FY 26-27. My apologies, I got the calendar year and the fiscal year mixed up a bit there. But I'd just like to double check and confirm whether the city's planning on moving forward with that project or not, because it looks like it's still placed in the relatively near future. And I guess thirdly, I would like to inquire as to, the reason for the Planning Commission meetings for the month of May both being canceled, because I think typically, based on past experience, the Planning Commission overview of the capital improvement plan for general planning compatibility and whatnot happens before June. So I was curious as to why that was changed. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff, and public again. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for hosting this workshop. Very informative. To the city manager, to the staff, to all the directors here, thank you very much. It's what we needed to hear. We need to know. And let me just say this, maybe at least once a month, bring us up to speed on what's going on, a little report from each department head. Mayor and Council, we're in dire straits out there in the national level. It's coming down to the local level. And I see a lot of cities and hear a lot about cities going budget-wise. In other words, there's not enough money to cover their allocations and their resources. So I'm just saying, let's not get in trouble. Let's hear about it and give reasons why things can't be done. Don't be ashamed to tell the public the truth. The truth is what we need. We need facts. We need to know what can we do to help you so that we can all be in the same ballpark. And I just want to thank you all for hosting this workshop. I wish more people would have attended, maybe a little more communication out there, maybe reach out to the groups. And thank you, Mayor and Council, for all this, and staff. I really appreciate it. And let's all be united in this and try to strive to be better in the next year, month, or whatever, because, it's going to get more difficult. Thank you all.
Thank you.
There are no other public comments.
Thank you for that. I do have one more question before we go to comments from council. For the soccer field rehabilitation project, I know when we were discussing the reopening of the soccer field that we had this past year, there were a lot of safety concerns with that. I think gopher holes being one, kids, families is tripping over those sort of things. Is it the same safety concerns with this particular project in these different fields?
The gopher holes are less now. It's still a problem though. And it's one of the items that we will be tackling along with the irrigation system, improvements to the turf overall.
Gotcha. And Director Dwyer, you had something to add there.
Thank you. Gopher holes are only for west right now, so east look really good. West, we went out there specifically after reading those comments, took a look. We want to partner again with the soccer league, and they're very interested in doing west, but we had to set aside funds in order to do that. But we're past gopher holes. We are now at divots and holes and where dying grass, it's a bigger safety issue, as noted in that survey that was said. Yeah.
Thank you. Just wanted information.
Yes, thank you.
And then safety concerns with, I'm sorry here, the skate park rehabilitation. Is that because of safety concerns or just overall maintenance? Or?
Yeah, it's the rebar. It's moving. So we did talk to a skate park contractor, and so it's common for that to happen. It's just after a good number of years, and the use we get a lot of use at the skate park. I wish we could actually quantify that a little bit better, but we are good. We did talk to a contractor earlier this year, and we are safe to obviously not do it immediately, but it's something we need to look for in the soon for future.
Thank you. And last thing is the upgrade of city pools.
Yeah.
Also safety concerns related to that as well?
Yeah, so our systems they're old. They're about 20 years out there, and they're dilapidating. And so what's happening is it's using a lot more energy to produce a lot of those systems. It is an expensive cost. It's deferred maintenance. Normally we want to put in dollars each year to really just lower that. But what happened this last year was we did have to close for a period of time. We closed 2 months early, not that we had wanted to, but our chemicals could not be balanced because our systems in our boiler room and our pump room were no longer functioning, and we couldn't get them to the speed they needed to. It took 4 months just to get the part and then to get it installed. So we barely made it in the nick of time, but happy to report we opened on time. But if we don't fix those pieces, we could lead to having to be closed for a longer period of time.
And the safety concern there is not getting the chemicals, I think saline or whatever
Yes.
is.
So if the chemicals are not balanced, you could have too high of chlorine, too low of chlorine, not to mention our boilers and our and the actual pumps themselves control the water and the chemistry and the temperatures. So yes, it's everything in that water is a safety concern.
Thanks so much for answering those questions.
Thank you.
Council comments, we'll start with Councilor Toms, if you have any.
No other comments, just thanks for all of the reports and the input.
Thanks. Mayor Pro Tem, Tate, anything?
Yeah. So I was trying to figure out, a couple things. So I was looking at Fund 105, 106. So 105 is Measure S 2006. Measure S 2014 was Measure 106, and then 200 was gas tax. 215 is Measure J. 325 was city street improvements, and then 377 are arterial roads, right? And those all seem, I guess my first question would be, are those all dedicated road funds? Because they were all cited throughout the road projects.
Yes, they are, and they have been accumulating over the years. For example, local streets has a dedication of 250,000 per year.
Okay.
That has been accumulating. So we're simply trying to maximize their usage.
Got it. So those are all dedicated funds. There's an expectation those funds will be coming every year on the year. There's an accumulation of those shown in this current fiscal year. So it seems like there's going to be a big $4 million spend. I'm just summing up from those funds, and my math, honestly, is really small. I can't read all of it, but I could see the commas and make out a few of the numbers. But looking at the numbers, it looks like there's about $4 million the first year, about $3.2 million the second year, $2.4 million the third year. The fourth year looks like it kind of levels out at 2.4 million, and then 2.1 in the fifth. So I guess what I'm saying is there's this increase in spend and then a decrease over time. And I'm just wondering, is there any rhyme or reason as to why that is doing that?
I should also clarify that even with the gas tax, like the HUTA and SB1 funds, those have been accumulating. So that's why we're using them initially, but as the funding decreases over time, there is a decline. With that being said, we're expecting that conditions of the roadway, and there were comments on the PCI, we're expecting that it would go back up again over time. Right now, on an average, the PCI is about 54%, which is quite low. but we're expecting through the annual improvements that we bring it back up.
Great. So my question is, looking at this, I did some quick math, but it looks like on average, if we were to look at 5 years, it would be 2.8 million spent every year for 5 years ongoing. And I look back at the other presentation, and the debt financing is only at about 20 million at a 15-year mark, is 1.8. I guess what I'm saying is that we can afford almost that much more, and I didn't include the potential impact fees. I guess what I'm asking is, if we were to cluster these projects, I know I'm gonna go back, God, like 9 years, planning commission. We talked about the lighting and downtown lighting over by Sprouts, and how there might be an opportunity to kind of enhance some of the lighting and what the street would look like in some of the neighborhoods, rather than having just your standard pole. If there was something decorative that could happen, I guess what I'm asking is can we combine some of these projects, slightly enhance the standards, and then spread that out over a larger loan or a larger debt finance with a lot more work completed at a higher standard, is what I'm asking. Or has that even been looked at? I know I'm kind of going way into the weeds, but I know that these funds are all pending, and they've been pending for years. And I know that we've had these issues. I'm just looking at the price of a stop sign is about $100 to $200. If we have 100,000, that's 1,000 signs that we can just very simply take the old one off, bolt the new one on, and have the reflectivity and address these issues. I know that takes time. I know that takes staff. That's not $100, but what I'm getting at is that these issues that we've been raising are pretty standard, and I'm just wondering, should we be packaging the resources specifically for you to go for the next 5 years and kind of put it on just a routine work? I guess maybe to the city manager, have we looked at that, or is there? It just feels like that resource burn at the first year could be spread out over multiple years while securing debt financing and carrying a large sum of money and produce a lot more work.
Okay, so there's a lot.
Yeah, I know.
Right there.
I just think the way we're looking at this, it just seems like, let's get some work done. Yes, please. But I think looking at this a little bit further out, it just seems like we're tapering down after that initial jump. And that's not including, just kind of looking for the debt financing component.
So if you were to look at the debt financing, that piece actually keeps going for the next few years. So that part doesn't really taper down. It's pretty solid for the next 5 years. And so the strategy that we were looking at is trying to, over this next year, use the funding that we had accumulated so that we could get a head start while we were getting debt financing secured. And then once that was in place, we would also have a larger road plan with all of the rest of the projects ready to go, and could just get everything going really, really quickly. There's other options potentially to go out for other debt financing. What we're trying to do with this debt financing is trying to make sure that we don't need to go out for a bond or for anything else for additional revenue. It's using the revenue that we already are incurring. But it's counting on the idea of having that vehicle impact fee. If that doesn't end up moving forward, that's going to be a significant loss on how we're planning on structuring this as well.
I see. So that $4 million is what we've secured over time through the debt finance. But I guess servicing that debt, I'm just looking at these numbers as, rather than us have these $200,000 for lighting, just to package that into one model that we can incorporate that work into the roads that we're repairing. It just seems to me like there's a way to use that $200,000, which is more valuable to us, spread over time, by taking a loan out the first year and then using that as servicing debt over time.
If I may clarify, with these annual programs, for example, the signing and pavement marking, the 200,000 annually for 5 years, most of this work is actually being done in-house. The replacement of the signs, for example, and that's probably the most efficient way. Just get the material and install the signs using our own staff. But there are limitations of staff capacity. The way it's being set up this way, we will be bundling projects. We will be supplementing the work and using funds from various projects to serve the overall projects we're working on. But this setup allows us more flexibility.
I see.
The pavement rehabilitation project has a specific season, would be done by an outside contractors team. But beyond that, these annual programs for funding for the whole fiscal year would allow us flexibility.
I understand, and I get that. I think in the past we've talked about that, but it seems like with all of those different things, we've been getting tied up with trying to move one or two, and then the rest sit, which is why we have this accumulation. And I'm just wondering, does it help from a project standpoint to bundle that into the Pinole Roads Rehabilitation Program, which encompasses all of this, and then allow to put those projects forward? Or does that just complicate things further?
I wouldn't bundle all of them. During the peak seasons, we would be utilizing, depending on the function, depending on the tasks within the individual projects. Let's say the pavement rehabilitation project is going to have a corridor that's going to have curb ramps. We can supplement the funding in the pavement rehabilitation with some money from the ADA compliant project. With that being said, for the 4 or 5 months that we will be quite busy with the pavement rehabilitation project, we don't want to deplete all of our funds that if we have needs during the rest of the year, we wouldn't find the resources to meet these needs. Also, yes, the pavement rehabilitation project would be done by an outside contractors team, but it would be managed by city staff. So we don't want to enlarge it too much that it would be difficult to manage. We have one public works specialist that does all the inspections for development projects, for capital projects. We're in the process of filling the second vacancy. So we will have two, but two basically inspectors that do other functions would have to check the work in development projects, pavement rehab, all the work we're performing. So we have to keep the staff resources in mind.
Okay. I'm thinking to myself, like, this is just all these different funds. Why not cluster this together and move forward? I mean, I don't know if that gets us more capacity. That's kind of what I was looking for, but I understand now. It just seems to me like we've been doing this way for so many years, and the results, like, we're just getting to the point where we're going to say, okay, we're going to start pushing for results. But you can tell that we've almost doubled the accumulation over time by not doing the work, and now it just seems like we need to overcompensate for that by getting a large sum of money and pushing these projects forward. At least that's my feeling, is like we're behind. And what is it going to take to get there? So that's just my thoughts behind this. It's 14 million over a 5-year period. There's got to be a way to maybe balance that out and then see if there's financing. But
I apologize if I'm not covering what's in my head in a clear way. We are definitely behind, yes. Yeah. But we have to tackle the state that we're in from different angles, if that makes sense, because our needs varies in their type, in their scale, in their location. So setting the project in this way which is pretty typical for local agencies, allow us that flexibility so that we would be working on all types of projects throughout the year.
Okay. I'm just thinking to myself, like, signage is a maintenance and operations thing. That's maintenance and operation. Here are all the signs, fit that into your work schedule for the year, right? And I see what you're saying, but is that something that could be coming out of a larger pot for maintenance and operations, and then switching over to, like, there's a line between the work, right? There's a separation between what we can do in house because we're tooled up for maintenance, and setting aside that money. It just seems like you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, six pots of money split again by maintenance, operation, and then project, and then falling short in one of those funds may happen, right? And then now we're having to pull money from all these other different areas.
I would, and I can see that
Maybe I gotta-
our city manager would like to describe, but I would like to clarify, and let's use the signing and pavement marking project as an example. We can perform some pavement marking, but not all. We can do paint, we cannot do thermoplastic, especially for lane lines, for example, for longer distance. So having that project, if we need it, it could be a separate contract in the future, within the fiscal year, depending on our needs as we assess our project, our progress. But we could potentially use this additional fund as part of the pavement rehab, because there will be a task line item for reinstatement of the pavement marking after the pavement. Does that make sense?
I'm totally with you. And forgive me because I'm trying to explain this to what's in my head, but it just seems to me like the efficiency behind or the administrative work behind having to go and, let's say, have I'm going to use an example, a $350,000 allotment from the Measure S 2006. Well, we just, based on our conversation, you're going to split that into operations and maintenance.
That's
and projects.
different, actually. That's purely operations. That's not contracted out. That's the regular maintenance that has been allocated on an annual basis for roadway repairs. For example, the potholing.
Right.
We don't have all the equipments. We have to rent some equipments, and we're about to purchase a roller to reduce the cost. But the material, this particular project is purely in-house.
Right. And I guess that, city manager, that's kind of what I'm mentioning is, like, is there a way to use those funds to fund a larger amount and then redistribute those projects a little bit more seamlessly?
So I think one of the areas where this gets a little confusing and complicated is that how we're showing the way that things are funded, it does not mean that these are separate projects. It is kind of how that is sort of broken down here, but it's really just how we're receiving that funding. So a lot of these projects, what we actually are presenting this is a larger road project that's going to happen citywide. And this is funding that's coming from different pots to enable that to happen. So what you're talking about, I think, is actually exactly what we're trying to do as well. Now, the question about potentially going and getting additional debt financing for this, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that yet.
Okay.
I would say that it would make sense to go through the process of us getting debt financing for one particular project in one particular area, and then let's see how successful we are. And then as that's successful, let's consider doing it for other projects in the future.
I see. So we're looking at the $1.4 to $1.8 million range with this additional, like, 2.8 or million. I'm just using the average over time. That additional million will just be there in case we decide to do an additional So I guess it would be $1 million plus whatever the impact fee, if that vehicle impact fee comes in.
So the vehicle impact fee, if that comes in, we would be using a substantial amount of that to pay back that debt financing if we decide to move forward with that.
Okay.
But what we would also want to make sure that we had was dedicated funds to pay back the loan, but then also ongoing funds to maintain our projects so that we still have maintenance costs, because most of these loans won't pay for maintenance. They'll only pay for new construction. And then we can also have it for potential projects that come up that are maybe unexpected, or for one-time other projects that are happening, like there's a pipe that bursts and we need to go take care of the road pavements through there. Because one of the things that we want to make absolutely certain of too is that if we are investing this much money into our roads, that we have enough funding to maintain them, and that's an ongoing process as well.
I see. So you're seeing this debt finance as the one, like step one into moving into potential other projects that might pop out of us servicing with this debt. Like if we were to, I don't know, it says 15 million or 20 million, whatever that was, we'll put whatever dent we can put in and then still have more money as far as operating budget based on this number here, and adjust accordingly over time.
Yes, so we would have a larger road plan, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly.
Yeah.
We'd have a larger road plan, and under Director El-Gundi's direction, we would go for what would have the most impact for the community, but we would still have ongoing funds for maintenance and sort of our pay-as-you-go projects as well.
Okay, so that was my, initial when we had our first meeting was, could we cluster this instead of going to the road twice, working on maybe just putting all this together and then pushing forward? But it sounds to me like
If I leave you, because I can sense, if I leave you with one comment, is that we are planning to cluster projects.
Okay.
That's definitely part of the plan. But another comment would be this setup allows us for more flexibility.
Okay.
I hope there is, this is actually a pretty typical type setup that allows the most flexibility. For example, we talked about the $350,000 for maintenance. In some cases, depending on the bids we receive, it could be more cost effective to do the potholing ourselves and remove that from the scope and just doing the type of work we cannot do by the contractor. Having this setup allows us the flexibility, and this is just one example.
Understood. Okay. Thank you. That's kind of what I wanted to talk a little bit about or get an understanding of, just because it's a lot of money and it's a huge investment, to try to understand, okay, how are we going to pay this off? Number one, where the money is and is, in those funds. And then what capacity of that money are we using for debt financing, what's left over? And I think you explained that pretty well. So thank you.
Thanks. Go to Councilor Martinez-Rubin for comments.
Thank you for thinking this through. It is a plan. We're hearing some things that I think are greatly positive in that you are willing to give priority to projects that are feasible based on available funding, and that you have given consideration to their priority because of the interest in reducing risk to the city and increasing the safety to the public. So in combination, reducing the liability to the city, increasing safety to the public is absolutely something that we all often we always ought to keep in mind, and I know that you do. And also the staff capacity and the management capacity of the projects. When you talk about flexibility, Director El-Gundi, I also recognize that it is a set of projects, the 26 projects that would be given priority in fiscal year 25-26. Consider the, as plans do, the potential for learning based on what actually comes to fruition in phases, even in a given year. And that as you have come to us in Pinole with great experience, there might be some things that are unanticipated today that we could not foresee a year from now. So I'm looking forward to seeing something come out in the first, this fiscal year as you have planned. Thank you.
Thanks. And we'll go to Councilor Murphy.
Mayor, I have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. With that being said, I have a few comments here. So thank you for explaining, I think, the issue with the Old Town traffic calming project and why it's being deferred a year. And I think, again, there are a number of things being done to mitigate the problem there. And the public is very interested in certain improvements there. And there's, over my time in being the council, there's been close calls and folks emailing and talking to me about that. There's also been 2 cars that have flipped over on that corridor in St. Pablo Avenue. And it's a 25-mile-per-hour corridor. I'm not even sure how that's even possible. And it's probably because of speeding, right? And so we're just in this predicament where that's the reality, where we have the construction of the bridge happening, we have road rehabilitation that's happening, and these phases happening. But I think folks are wanting that sort of safety protections. And so I'm not sure if it's a conversation apart from the CIP about any pilot projects we could do, or maybe just a larger conversation about enforcement and how we can support and help PD accomplish those goals. But just want to make it a point to put it out there as that's being a priority of the council, and just got to find ways to mitigate that in the short term. Second comment I have, and I've been pretty consistent about this for the past 2.5 years here, which is the Senior Center Auxiliary Parking Lot project. There's been lots of conversations about that on the council and sort of the need or no need for that. But my position on this is that I know it's deferred, I think, far out there. I don't really like the idea of that sort of looming there for us. A lot of the aspects of that project I really like, which is the solar canopy portion of that. I think the equity accessibility portion of that. But for me, I'm not really keen on investing into more parking lots in our city. And part of that, I was reflecting on this past week. I know Councilor Toms, you were there, and Councilor Murphy at the Valor Village opening. And even though it's a very small parcel, to see what's come out of that, which is 33 units of low-income housing for veterans and their families, it puts in my mind, okay, how can we be a little bit smarter about the use of each parcel in our city that we have available, and just exploring possibilities. It could be housing, it could be things like, I know Mayor Pro Tem Tavy mentioned community gardens being somewhere in our city. I don't really want to move forward with this project at this point in time. I'd be an advocate to either remove it from the CIP completely and have more conversations in the council in terms of what could be put in that place. So I'll just put it out there. I'll leave it for council or staff to comment on that. Sure.
Yes, that's the old Fowler House
Yes.
parcel. I was on the committee where we talked about the reuse, and the seniors were really, there was a lot of advocacy between having additional parking that's close by for the seniors, and we need to recall that a lot of seniors have mobility issues, and having parking closer to where the facility is really important. Now, over the last 5 years, after COVID, we're not quite back using the senior center to its prior potential. So I would be hesitant to take that off the table at this point until we really have some recovery with the facility and the use of the facility. Alternatively, there was some discussion about having bocce courts there. That's, it's a sport that can be enjoyed by people of all ages and all physical and developmental abilities. We currently don't have that in Pinole. I think in West County there's, 2 courts in Hercules, there's several courts in Crockett, and then, of course, the biggest facility in, I think they say west of the Mississippi, is in Martinez. So it was through community groups, there was a discussion about a parking lot or bocce courts. So to for the council, to kind of flip, I think we need to go back to the community and at least have that conversation. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the purpose of going out to the community and asking what they want if we're going to do a 180-degree turn.
Mm-hmm. And I did not know bocce ball was part of the conversation. I think I speak for a lot of residents in saying that we need pickleball courts in the city. I've gotten that comment so many times. So thank you for your comments there. I think conveniently, this is deferred many, many years from now on our CIP. But I do want to make it a point, I think in the next year, as we're talking about, I think you're mentioning a real estate master plan at some point, thinking about what could go there and hopefully engaging in a community and process and having some sort of presentation come back to council at an appropriate time so we can explore what could be in that certain parcel. Any other comments on that, Mayor Pro Tem?
Just hearing the conversation, has there been money dedicated to that project?
Or prior prior funds
at any
spent?
point?
It is budgeted in the CIP, if that's what you mean.
I think my sort of question is has there been funding allocated or funds spent on that project
If
to
I
date?
may, there is a cost estimate for the improvement, although I don't believe it's that accurate currently. It may have been done in the past, but there isn't funding allocation for the project.
You said there is?
There is not.
Okay.
There is an estimate of what it could potentially cost, but it's not currently funded per se.
And to date, there hasn't been any funds spent on that particular project?
No.
There has not been. Okay. Gotcha. I just want to check, Councilor Murphy, I'm not sure if you have your hand raised, but just checking if you have any comments at this time.
I don't. I think we should just allow staff to circle back to us about that particular project as we get more updates. But thank you again.
Thank you. And would love to hear more about the feedback from the community about, I think Councilor Thompson mentioned in prior years having that conversations while you were on the subcommittee and seeing more specifically what that is and I think revisiting that with community at this point in time to see where we are and what community is really needing from that that parcel. So with that being said, I don't have any other comments at this time. I think
If I may, for 1 minute, and I'll try to remember the public comments. The skate park actually needs more work than was initially estimated. We need a retaining wall, for example. So the estimate included in the CIP is not the actual estimate, which was part of the reason why it was pushed for another year. As was mentioned with regards to having to close the pool, there are equipments that are in desperate need for replacement. We're currently repairing the heaters, but it's not even the appropriate repair per se. And there are equipments that need to be replaced. Before we reopened the pool, we tested the chemicals, of course, and this is something that's done on a regular basis for health and safety matters. The CIP will be brought forward to City Council review and the community on a quarterly basis, as it used to be, and was the first under my, it will be on June 3rd, I want to say. It's currently on the planner. With regards to the Planning Commission meeting, because of a holiday, we talked, and there was an initial assumption that there would be a special meeting on May 19th, but instead it's being scheduled for the regular meeting in the beginning of June. That was the reason. And a concept for the canopy, the solar canopy, would actually be the parking lot by the soccer field off of Pinole Valley Road, because it wouldn't affect the visibility. It wouldn't be too close to residential community. There are dwelling units across the street, but it's far enough. And there are grant opportunities that we would be pursuing for such improvement.
Thank you for that. Any other comments from council or motions?
I'll move that council approve the CIP plan as presented today, with the priority for fiscal year 25-26 being the projects that were described earlier in this presentation, and that is my motion.
Mayor,
Yes, please go ahead.
I think, and maybe staff can clarify the process. I think for this item, it usually comes back to, well, we have I think the timeline actually explained it. So are we going to approve it tonight?
And I think we still have to go to planning commission first for feedback, and it comes back in the revised and final. So maybe you can clarify the process for us.
Yes, the revised CIP will come for City Council consideration on June 3rd. It will go to the Planning Commission on June 9th. The final CIP for your consideration and approval will be on June 17th.
Thanks for the explanation.
So I was just going to ask if there were any specific clarities or takeaways that staff has from this conversation that they'll be moving forward with that timeline.
We will probably discuss in the background, but one of the items that I noted, for example, with regards to the debt financing over the 15-year period, because right now we're not assuming 20 million, but it seems that it's desired to be able to do more work in years 2 to 5.
So if I may, the debt financing will come back as a separate item. Right now, we'll just make some assumptions that would be moving forward in the CIP, and the debt financing would actually come back after this budget was approved. We would be moving forward probably with a contract with a financial advisor. That piece would come forward to council. Then when we actually went out for debt financing and we got all of the potential rates and all of that, those models would also come forward to council for final approval. So there would be a few items that would still come forward to council, both for discussion and then final approval.
Can I ask a quick question? Thank you for that explanation. Is that something that's coming forward before we approve it? Okay, no. So what is the potential timeline or horizon for that?
For the debt financing?
Yeah.
It can take up to about 6 months. We may be able to be a little bit shorter, but most likely by the time we finally are approved for all of debt financing, I would say by November, with the idea that then we would have the debt financing secured for the following construction season, which is why we front-loaded this next fiscal year.
Can I ask it's more of, a simple question. So just recently, President asked for lower interest rates. Fed said, hey, we're holding interest rates right where they are. How does that play into us securing debt? And if we were to secure debt at the 5% rate, I can't see this. Hold on. The 5% rate, and for whatever reason, interest rates go down, what kind of position does that put us in? Is that something we would have to refi at a lower rate, or just continue with the 5%?
So when we get a little bit closer, we can have, ideally, we'll already have a financial advisor in place that can advise us
They'll
through
navigate
some of
that.
those pieces. I will also say initially when I was doing some of the modeling, I was assuming a higher interest rate. However, as we were kind of looking through this, I was pleasantly surprised by the interest rates that ended up being presented. So that would be something that I think we would need to discuss and that we'd bring back to council, and we would only want to move forward at a time that the interest rate seemed advantageous as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comments at this time?
There was a motion. You didn't ask for a second, so I'm wondering what's next procedurally.
Procedurally, do you want to rescind your motion, or is there a second to Councilor Martinez-Rubin's motion?
Could we make a clarification on what exactly this motion would be? My understanding is that this motion would be to move forward with the CIP as a recommendation that we would then bring back without any changes from council?
Yes.
My understanding was that it was approval of the CIP.
No, it's approval. Primarily, the emphasis in the motion is that the projects as presented for fiscal year 25-26 be given priority. I realized, so that's the thrust of it.
Gotcha. City Clerk, are you clear on what the motion was? Just want to double check.
No, not at this point. I'd love to have it just restated for the record.
Okay, I move that the council approve the recommendation presented by staff to give priority to in fiscal year 25-26 to the projects that were presented today.
Gotcha. And just to clarify, does that impede on the process, or is it just make it clear that, okay, we heard the recommendations here today, and to be brought forward in the next phase will just be the CIP as presented?
If I can
Sure.
clarify, we're not approving the projects. We are directing staff to bring those back.
The plan with the projects as presented today that are identified as priority for fiscal year 25-26.
Okay, and we're directing staff to bring those back, not approving them.
Correct.
Okay, and I'll second that.
Gotcha. So it's essentially bringing back the same CIP?
Okay, I'm not ashamed to say this, but I'm confused.
Through the mayor, I have a recommendation. I don't think that this particular motion is necessary. I think that staff has received the direction that they need. It's nice to have I think I understand the intent, but I don't think it's necessary.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Murphy, you had a comment there.
I wanted to, the reason why I paused before, or I asked to ask that question after Councilmember Martinez-Rubin's question, or motion, excuse me, was largely because I just wanted to ensure that staff could repeat the takeaways that came from this conversation that were council direction. My understanding is that we're good with the recommendations as presented, and we're going to be moving forward essentially status quo as we have this conversation with the CIP process. That's what I got, but are there other things that staff has taken away from this that are that have been considered council direction or key takeaways?
That is also my takeaway. The comments I noted here for other work that we need to do, although wouldn't be brought back as part of the CIP. But in terms of piloting traffic calming measures and enforcement in the Old Town area, in terms of when collaborating with community development, the type of projects that could potentially be considered for the parking lot of the senior center, I kept comments in general, but not necessarily about the project. So the project would be brought forward as is, and I personally appreciate your recognition and initial acceptance of the associate engineer position.
Perfect. Does that answer your question, Councilor Murphy?
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, sounds good. And I know we had some feedback from City Clerk. Do you still want to move forward with your motion, Councilor Martinez-Rubin and Councilor Thomas?
I'll withdraw my second.
Yeah, not necessary. If we all, I think, understood
Okay.
the intent of what the discussion was for the past however long we have had it. Thank you tonight.
Sounds good. If there are no other comments from council at this time, just want to thank, again, staff for being here and for all the presentations and also taking our feedback from the last council meeting and implementing it into docs that we have here today. Looking forward to more conversations. I know Planning Commission is going to take a look at this as well and come back to us with their feedback. So with that being said, I don't want to hold everybody on our Tuesday evening here. So thank you for being here. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting to the regular city council meeting of May 20th in remembrance of Amber Swartz. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.